Everyone, and welcome to tonight's Town Council meeting. It's May 4th, 2021. And if we can have our roll call.
Thank you, good evening. Councilmember Risto.
Here.
Councilmember Hudis.
Here.
Councilmember Badami.
Here.
Vice Mayor Rennie.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Sayoc.
Here. So we do have a quorum, and so we are calling the meeting to order at 7 o'clock sharp. And before we begin into our usual order of business, I do have excitement to share 3 proclamations where we honor our staff. And tonight, what we'd like to do, normally we give a proclamation and we hand it to our directors on behalf of each department, but because we are via Zoom, if we can show those proclamations, and I'll be asking each director to be on screen and just speak and introduce those that may be present. And I think what's important for me to highlight to all of those that are watching in our public, as well as our colleagues, is the important work that our staff do, not only internally on behalf of our town, but also representing our town in the larger region. And so the first proclamation that I would like to offer is to Director Matt Morley. This is Public Works Week. And the proclamation, I'm not going to read it all together, but this year's theme is Stronger Together, which celebrates and honors the tens of thousands of men and women in North America who provide and maintain the infrastructure and services collectively known as public works. I think we need to highlight that during our pandemic, our public works department was still out there ensuring that we stay strong, not only health, but of ourselves, our infrastructure, and our town. And I just want to give our deepest appreciation to Director Morley and his staff. Matt's professional involvement beyond the town is as former chair of the VTA's Technical Advisory Committee, and he's an active member of the Municipal Public Works Officers. And Director Morley, on behalf of the council, we would like to proclaim this week as Public Works Week and give you our largest gratitude and give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate the recognition. And on behalf of all of the team that works for me, and it truly is a team of strong individuals that make it happen. We appreciate the recognition and I look forward to celebrating National Public Works Week. If you see us, especially this month around town, in the parks or on the streets, in our white trucks with the logo on it, or in our orange vests or green vests, by all means, stop and talk and chat and get to know the individual that's there. It's a great team that we work with, and we're proud to serve the town of Los Gatos.
Absolutely, thank you. And for those, and Director Morley, I personally have gone up to several of your staff, so I appreciate the kindness that they always offer, and they're great ambassadors to our town. Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Number 2 is our Building Safety Month proclamation. And on behalf of our Building Safety Department, I'm going to ask Robert Gray to turn on his video. He represents our building staff. And Robert is our immediate past president of the Peninsula chapter of the International Code Council, immediate past president of the Central California chapter of the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials, and member of the ICC Tri-Chapter Code Change Committee. One of the things that I just want to highlight is that in 2019, when the council decided to be ambitious with our sustainability goals and go electric, Mr. Gray was eager and as ambitious as the council, and it was just a delight to make sure that he implemented and executed the vision that we were seeing at the time. So, Mr. Gray, on behalf of the council, I want to thank you for all the work that you are doing, and thank your staff and offer this proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of the rest of the building and code compliance team, we appreciate the recognition, and we appreciate all of our staff doing a diligent work every day. We have a couple of our staff members here. I'd like to recognize, if that's okay with you, Mayor.
Yes, please do.
Please, if you could turn on your cameras. We have Sherry Strand. She's our permit technician, one of our permit technicians. She was able to attend tonight. And we also have Susan O'Brien. She's our contract plan reviewer. She's been doing that for us for several years. Both of these people are just two of a very important staff that we have that we are certainly blessed to have employed at our town. So thank you to them and the rest of the staff. And again, Mayor and the rest of council, thank you for the proclamation and the recognition.
Thank you. And for many of you that attend our meetings, Shelley Neese is not a stranger, but this week is Municipal Clerks Week proclamation as well. And in addition to attending all of our council meetings, Shelley represents the clerk department and served on the City Clerks Association of California's annual conference committee for 2020. And I think has been instrumental in making sure that our operations to go via Zoom and maintain our ongoing commission and council meetings has been running smoothly. And Shelley, for that, we appreciate all that you do and your team does on our behalf.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And on behalf of the department, I have two of the staff with me, Jenna DeLong, our deputy clerk, who works the back end and helps things run smoothly. And then Bridget Falconio is our part-time office assistant who is assisting with records retention. Linda, our administrative assistant, wasn't able to attend tonight, but she keeps us going with all of the business half of the department. And between all four of us, we keep the department running, and we're happy to help in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. And so to our public, these are just three examples of the great work that your staff provide to you on a daily basis. I think our work is one where if you don't notice us, it's a good thing. But I want to make sure, and the council wants to make sure that they feel the gratitude that we have to each and every one of them for doing the work that we do. So thank you again. On that note, we now move to the work that the council members are doing on our behalf. As many of you know, we do represent the town on other council meetings, regional meetings. And so this is an opportunity for council members to share with the public any actions that they may have taken on our behalf and items of general interest and concern. Vice Mayor, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. On 4/21, I attended the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Legislative Committee. On 4/22, their Mobile Source Committee met. On 4/23, I attended a Leading Local Addressing Hate Crime webinar. On 4/25, I attended this Disasters Do Not Wait Emergency Preparedness Fair. On 4/26, and last night, the finance commissions have been meeting on special meetings, I guess, to discuss the budget and working through that. I think we have one more next week. And on 4/27, the Community and Senior Services Commission met, and we've been collecting presentations from the various senior providers in town. The commission's continuing to collect information before aggregating it into a recommendation for council. And then this past weekend, I visited a small orchard and a small farm in South County to see how we can preserve agriculture in our county. And on 5/3, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority Finance and Administration Committee met, and one of the main things we discussed was the large and growing number of very late delinquent accounts and what should we do about it. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hudis.
Good evening. Let's see, on April 21st, I participated in a neighborhood watch emergency preparedness meeting. On April 22nd, I attended the Silicon Valley Leadership Group Mayor's Circle meeting. And on April 26th, I attended the Finance Commission and participated in the Finance Commission meeting. And on April 27th, I observed the Council Policy Committee meeting. And on May 3rd, I participated in the Finance Commission meeting last night. And then I don't know if I need to report, but earlier we had a special town meeting with the library board.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Badami.
Thank you, Mayor. On April 26th, I attended the Finance Commission meeting as an attendee or observer. On April 21st, I conversed with Kevin Arroyo regarding the community garden project that was discussed during the April 20th council meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. 2 Sundays ago, despite the drizzle, I think attitudes were still sunny. Along with the mayor, I attended the Chamber of Commerce launch of their Listen, Learn, Change, Grow campaign. And I'm sure people have seen the banners around town. The event had our poet laureate there, a number of religious representatives, and people from different groups. So it was a great way for the community to start coming together on an important issue. I attended the 2 Finance Commission meetings since the last council meeting. With the mayor, I was at the Policy Committee, and one of the things that that's been initiated is a study. Our town attorney will start looking into what are regulations, what are issues, what are concerns in other communities around cannabis sales, just to explore this so that we can be in a position to start public outreach and see if this is something that makes any kind of sense in Los Gatos. So keep your ears open. There will be meetings coming up. I met with a number of residents, including members of the Anti-Racism Coalition, to talk about issues for the General Plan 2040 and diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And met with another resident to talk about issues around a proposed open pit sand mining with the environmental and cultural impacts associated with that. I attended the Highway 9 Trail Connector public meeting where there was outreach talking about the next steps for connecting the Los Gatos Creek Trail to Highway 9. Lots of good interest there. I've spoken with the Chamber of Commerce on a variety of issues. And the General Plan 2040 Committee, on which I sit with Councilmember Badami, meets this Thursday, May 6th, and it's our final meeting. So the draft General Plan is online right now. We'll be reviewing it just to make sure that it's cohesive, it meets our goals as stated, and then it'll be moving on to the Planning Commission. So we're getting moving on that after well over 2 years, I believe. And and May is Bike Month. So very specifically, tomorrow is Bike to School Day. So there already are overflowing bike racks, I think at least at Blossom Hill School, but we have great participation of students biking through town. And I just want people to be aware that there may be more than usual. And these are children, and as much as safety is taught, give a little patience, give a little room, and slowing down for a cyclist for a few seconds is better than being in bumper to bumper gridlock car traffic. So anyway, we've got great weather and this is a great month. And I would just put a challenge out to everybody. If you don't already bike, just consider replacing one car trip this month with a bike ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. And the only other item I'd like to add, in addition to all the duties that have already been shared, 2 weeks ago, we closed our meeting in honor of Charles Erickson, a former planning commissioner and community member, and a person that we all had a chance to serve with. Unfortunately, it was 12:40 a.m. and I don't think we did proper justice, but I do want to recognize that that occurred 2 weeks ago. And on Saturday, we had a celebration of his life and his service to the town of Los Gatos. And he will be greatly missed. And I know he was many of our colleagues. So, Town Manager Pravetti.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I have several items to report tonight. In addition to Thursday's General Plan Committee meeting, where we're hoping the committee will advance the full document to the public hearing stage, We have other meetings coming up that I want to announce. Our police department on May 11th is holding a community meeting to review the automated license plate reader technology and answer questions of the public and explain how this technology will be deployed and how privacy will be protected. So please look for this invitation at the police department's website. In addition, the police department is launching the parking survey. At our last meeting, we talked about the importance of moving forward with employee parking. So the survey of employees and businesses will start this week. So please pay attention and fill that out. And then on May 17th, we will continue with our partnership with the county, and we will be offering free COVID testing at the Adult Recreation Center. I also want to update the council on the accomplishments of the economic recovery resolution that you passed when COVID first started. We've had over 85 businesses take advantage of the subsidy and incentives that are associated with that. And I just wanted to review some of those highlights. Over 19 businesses are currently in the process or have recently completed the CUP process, the conditional use permit process, to obtain a new CUP or expand using the 50% subsidy. So that really has had an impact. In addition, more than 20 businesses have expanded their business models, including offering personal services with an economic recovery agreement. And finally, more than 45 businesses have been able to utilize the temporary parklets that council had the foresight to put in last year. So we're continuing to gather data and metrics about these efforts, but we thought it was really important for you to know that businesses continue to be attracted to Los Gatos. We have new CUPs going through the process, and we're looking forward to welcoming some new businesses to our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Pravetti. Councilmember Hudis.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to clarify a couple of things. In observing the policy committee meeting on April 27th, there were several motions that were passed. One was to change the policy manual, policy 2-11, to include language about inclusivity, and to include a new policy that specifies term limits for all boards, committees, and commissions, and also to direct the council that applicants shall be asked the same core questions provided to the council by the town clerk. There was also direction to discuss changes with the youth commission, and there were also changes discussed and a motion made about town agenda format and rules policy 2-01. It wasn't clear whether that was a recommendation or a policy change, and the town attorney was directed to work on the motion after it passed 2-0. Those were items that I observed that weren't necessarily covered in the report.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that. And all of these policy recommendations will be coming to council for their final review and deliberation. And Town Manager Pravetti and I are just looking at when we can agendize those. Yes, Mr. Schultz.
And just to clarify, if there's some confusion, the policy committee has no ability to make any decisions on their own. All decisions made by the policy committee has to go back to the council or through the planning commission and then to the council for final decision. They simply don't have the ability to make changes to policies on their own.
Councilmember Hudis.
I understand the resolution, and I would just point out that the motion was, quote, to approve the policy manual changes and also provide further direction specific to the Youth Commission as discussed. So I would suggest checking the transcript of the meeting.
Thank you. And Mr. Schultz, we will work with you as well as Town Manager. I'll work with you and Ms. Pravetti on when we could agendize these for future council deliberation. Okay, we now move to consent items, and as we normally do, these are items that are considered more administrative in their nature. We have 12 items on consent, And so first I look to council members. If there is an item that you would like to pull, Vice Mayor Rennie.
I would like to comment on number 5 when appropriate, but not pull it. And I will be recusing myself from number 9.
Okay, duly noted. And I now look to those in our public meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Badami. And Ms. Badami, you are on mute still?
Sorry about that. Along with Vice Mayor Rennie, I'm also recusing myself from item number 9 due
Okay,
to the location of my office.
okay, duly noted as well. And I now look to those in our public. If there is an item that you would like to pull, please raise your hand. And I see Ms. Hogan. If Ms. Neese, if we could bring her over. Actually, Ms. Neese, I see your hand raised first. And you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Just wanted to confirm that Councilmember Risto will be recused from the Forte item.
Yes,
Thank you.
I was going to bring that up when I voted, but yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Ms. Neese, if we could bring over Ms. Hogan so that she could just clarify which item she would like to pull. And Ms. Hogan, if you could just identify which agenda item, and no need to comment, we'll just pull that.
I'd like to comment on the listen, learn, change, grow flags.
And what item is that, please?
Well, is it just a general public comment?
Yes,
be-
and so under verbal communication, you'll have that option.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other hands? I see none raised. So I am closing public testimony. I am bringing this back to council members. We do have 2 recusals on number 9, as well as on Kate. And so Mr. Vice Mayor, I know you had a comment. So would you like to make your comment as you make your motion?
Sure, I will. I guess I can make a motion to move all of the consent calendar 1 through 12. And I will be abstaining on number 9, or recusing myself on number 9, sorry. And I just wanted to also highlight number 5 is new for us. Normally we do hazardous vegetation weeds. This is the first time we've brought forward our new effort to go up the fire ladder to vegetation brush. Normally we've been requiring that weeds have been removed. Now we're requiring brushes removed. And that's important because weeds catch fire easily, but the brush is what gets the fire hotter that can then catch the trees on fire. So I just wanted to highlight that this was new in our effort to prepare for fire season in Los Gatos.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So we do have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilmember Badami?
I'll second, recusing myself on item number 9.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call it. Councilmember Badami?
Aye.
Councilmember Hudes?
Aye.
Vice Mayor?
Aye.
Councilmember Risto?
Aye, except for the tight item.
And I also vote aye. And so our consent agenda passes unanimously with appropriate recusals. Thank you very much. So I now turn to verbal communications, and this is the opportunity for the public to speak an item that is not on the agenda. So items that have already been mentioned, such as our flags, this is your opportunity to do that. You will have 3 minutes. And so those in the public, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. I see Ms. Hogan, and if we could move her over. And Ms. Hogan, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for allowing me my First Amendment right to speak freely this evening. As I discussed in the previous council meeting, listen, learn, change, grow is critical race theory and is also known as Black Lives Matter and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We call on each of you to denounce CRT and take down those listen, learn, change, grow flags today. The flags are an intentional disguise by evil people who want to deceive us with color and feel-good words and to infiltrate your anti-white, pro-Black agenda into Los Gatos. We believe in love, gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion. These are American values that make everything right and good between people. Your campaign hurts, divides, and threatens everyone in this town. The lives and livelihoods of everyone. People are moving away because of this. How can you sit there so proud, arrogant, and self-righteous and not condemn this horrific agenda? People are very angry at you for failing to protect 78% of our residents who are white, while putting non-white lives in danger as well. Today, white skin is being blamed for yesterday's problems, but tomorrow brown skin may be blamed. Then the next race, until every race is blamed for past wrongdoings, solving nothing. We must forgive each other and strive to do better by raising all people up and never put anyone down. Bullies do that. Communism does not work for the people and only works for you, the government. Your evil communist campaign only helps to fulfill the elite's Agenda 21 and Agenda 30, which will destroy every principle for which America stands for: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We did not vote for this campaign, which says, quote unquote, all white people are oppressors of all Black people, and all white people must denounce their race and white skin color. CRT is being forced on all Americans since Joe's illegal takeover of America by way of massive election fraud. CRT has already been stopped by citizens all around the country, and we will stop it here because it is wrong for all of us. We believe Mayor Sayoc, Town Council members Rennie, Bottomy, Ristow, Yehudas, Town Attorney Schultz, Town Manager Pravetti, and Chamber of Commerce ED Catherine Summers are betraying us. The negligent implementation of your terrifying campaign is being done in exchange for financial benefits paid for by we the people, as documented by Christopher Rufo. We know Silicon Valley Big Tech is married to the government, and you work closely together against the American people by deceiving us with censorship of life-threatening and life-altering information. This is evident by Catherine of the Chamber and her husband, Jeff Summers of Silicon Valley Big Tech, who applauded DEI at the last council meeting as a good thing, even though white-skinned Summers will be the first to say that he is not an oppressor of Black-skinned people. We believe Mayor Sayoc, the town council, attorney, and manager, as well as Summers, should resign as traitors, for you have already clearly violated your oath as an elected officer and you are no longer needed. We call on all of you to denounce critical race theory in this town and in our schools. Take down those listen, learn, change, grow flags.
It's wonderful how we give people the opportunity to speak. And so our next speaker is Michael Hutchinson.
Hi, thank you, Town of Los Gatos. My name is Michael Hutchinson. I've been a longtime resident of Los Gatos, and I'm calling just to touch base on something that was said earlier that Maria Risto touched on, which was I'm looking to investigate and work alongside Los Gatos with creating a boutique dispensary with a conditional use permit for cannabis. And so I'm exploring that option and idea with some marketing professionals in the area. I'd like to have some time to talk and update who the town of Los Gatos to be able to print it with those recognizing the medical uses for cannabis, also recognizing the diversity of Los Gatos, additional revenue for the city, and help for Los Gatos residents that may be seeking out medical marijuana or other types of uses for marijuana that can help them instead of using other cities like San Jose or going to Santa Cruz which provides openly these services and dispensaries. So that's just a little bit of my intention there. And I know that Silicon Valley is an innovative and, eyes forward looking to the future. And so I was glad to hear that Maria brought up that topic earlier tonight. So it is something you've heard of before. And that's really all the time I need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Rob Moore.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I would just like to first speak in support of the Listen, Learn, Change, Grow event. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend. I was out of town, but I saw that some of the members of the council were there, and it seemed like a really incredible event, one that was very focused on community and really bringing out the most important parts of Los Gatos. So I just wanted to speak in support of that, and thank you all for your support of that. Along those lines, I think it's important to know that, or important to look at the police budget as we move forward into budget season. I think this is something that a lot of people in a lot of communities are talking about, and it's something that we should continue to look at critically as a town. Also, thank you for your support of biking this month. I think that's incredibly important. I do not do the same level of biking as Councilmember Risto, but I'm striving to. And so thank you all for everything you do. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Next speaker is Amy.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. I just wanted to address the upcoming budget discussions. And I think most of you know I'm a member of the Los Gatos Anti-Racism Coalition. Just want to add that in. So we've been advocating for providing mental health services to the town, in addition to police services, which obviously are needed. But we do believe that when someone is having a mental health crisis, whether it's a teenager having a mental health crisis or a homeless person or anybody, that it's often much better to have an unarmed mental health professional come and address that issue. Having an armed police officer can often escalate that situation, and really what's better is to de-escalate it so that nobody gets harmed. So for that reason, we'll be advocating for freezing the police budget with the exception of pension liability and freezing hiring of sworn officers, which basically means that when a current officer retires or resigns for any other reason, rather than hiring a replacement, we'll advocate for not hiring the replacement and instead trying to shift that money into a more community social services function so that we can begin to hire social services experts or professionals to help with these mental health crises. We've looked at some of the data compared to nearby cities. Los Gatos spends more per capita than these other cities like Cupertino, Saratoga, and other cities in Silicon Valley. So we just sort of wanted to introduce that idea to council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And would anyone else in the public like to speak to us under verbal communications? I see no hands raised, so I will be closing verbal communications. Just a reminder that there were several people that commented on our budget in 2 weeks. Our next council meeting will be focused on the 21-22 budget. And so for those items that are raising interest, please attend that meeting as well. And Mr. Schultz, I do think it's important that we indicate that the cannabis discussion, if you could just mention again that this is a beginning conversation, and for those that are showing interest, how they can participate or what to anticipate.
Yes, in January, council gave the approval on the prioritization of ordinances to look into and debate and discuss. One of them was cannabis facilities in Los Gatos. And so we had our first kickoff meeting with the policy committee as mentioned. Over the next 3 months, there'll be numerous workshops, panel discussions, that the public can participate in. I'm reaching out to community meetings such as the Rotary and other ones. And so if anybody is interested, please contact me. My email is rschultz@losgatos ca.gov, and I'll be happy to provide you with the list of those meetings as they occur this summer. Just keep an eye out. We'll post on Instagram, Facebook, and all other outlets as those meetings come forward over the summertime. And then it'll come back to the policy committee in September and back to council towards the end of the year to see if there is any further action the council wants to take.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. That concludes verbal communications, and we now move to our other business. The first item is Agenda 13, which is a report and presentation from West Valley Solid Waste Management Authority regarding Senate Bill 1383.
Good evening, Mayor. Matt Morley, Director of Parks and Public Works. I'll get us kicked off just with a quick introduction as Marva's moved up and turns on her video. So SB 1383 is going to change the way that that we handle our solid waste a little bit, and it's a big deal, and it's going to be impactful, I think, to all of us in the way that we take care of our garbage, and we'll see some of that impact through our bills. So I wanted you to understand that there is a cost to this. We are introducing it, continuing to introduce it and roll out communication to the community, and Marva will cover quite a bit of that as well. I also wanted to introduce you to Marina Chislett. And Marina's on my team and works closely with the solid waste management team and other many things environmental. So she's the workhorse behind our environmental efforts in Parks and Public Works and is the connection. She's also the one who solves all of the garbage complaints that you get. So she's the one who makes those go away. So she works magic there behind the scenes in Parks and Public Works. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Marva for the presentation.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Good evening, Mayor and Council. And I can't tell, is the presentation up? It's coming. Okay, got it. Okay, so this is going to be a quick presentation to get you up to speed on everything you want to know about SB 1383. The goal is just to kind of give you the background, and so that we have a good foundation on kind of where we're going next. Next slide. So the state has been focusing on the short-lived climate pollutants, with methane being the one that is dealing with the garbage side. And organic waste is one of the largest waste streams in California, which is one of the creators of methane. So that's where we're focusing on the organics. Next slide. So the state had set a goal to 2025 to reduce the reduction organic waste by 75%. And also, which is new for us, is to focus on edible food recovery and getting food that is still available to be consumed by people to them. So that's something new for our sector. Next slide. So what will need to happen is, there's all the jurisdictions have very specific requirements from SB 1383. So we have to provide organics collection to all the residents and businesses. We have to work on this edible food recovery program, all the education to all of your businesses and residents. In order to have a market for the material, the jurisdictions are required to procure recyclable and recovered organics, securing access and capacity, which we've already done. And then the last piece is implementing ordinances, monitoring, and then all of the enforcement going with CalRecycle. This is all effective January 1st, 2022. There is legislation that's sitting in Sacramento right now, SB 619, that may delay when CalRecycle can start fining us for not being in compliance. They haven't changed the effective date. It is still January 1st, 2022, and we are going, full steam ahead to meet that deadline. Next slide. So from a collection standpoint, the biggest change we have to your residents is that the food scraps will begin to go into your organics container. And so instead of into the garbage, the black container, into the green container. And we will be distributing the little kitchen food pails for residents to have, and then collect the material and take it into the green cart. The other piece on here, which I'll just mention briefly, is CalRecycle is very prescriptive on the colors of the carts. So we will also be phasing in, your garbage carts will be phasing into being black or a shade of gray. And so as replacements coming in, that will be happening. When the new contract with the new hauler in 2024, or because that's when the current contract ends, we'll address that again, but we do have until 2036 to make that change. Next slide. So the edible food recovery, the important part is, one, we're going to be looking at this kind of county-wide. And so there are 2 tiers that generators. The tier 1, which goes into effect January 1st, is your supermarkets. It's Safeway, the large grocery stores. And the good news with that is, Safeway is all over the state. So all the Safeways, all the Trader Joe's, all of those will be working with the same programs. We'll just need to work with the local management. We'll need to make sure that there is, on the city town's website, kind of where you can go, where materials should be taken. And then we also have to monitor that the generators are maintaining the proper records. So next slide. So the education and outreach, which tonight is one of the first steps, is to just to educate the residents and businesses of what is required, what they're going to need to do. The big lift is going to be to multifamily residents. So kind of focusing there and the why it's important to do it, and then all the different options that they will have. And then again, as I mentioned, the edible food recovery programs. One of the things we'll be doing as the authority, we'll be working with the 4 member agencies so that we have consistent messaging throughout all 4. And that way, if there's not questions between one doing something and somebody else doing something else. Next slide. The procurement requirements, CalRecycle said we're collecting all this organic material. We need to create markets. So they said, okay, jurisdictions, you need to procure a certain amount of organic waste products, either compost or renewable natural gas. And also you need to make sure you are purchasing paper products and that have a specific recycled content paper. The biggest thing on that is going to help us is that this is the only area in the current regulations that requires a good faith effort. So as long as we have a plan on using the compost, how much we need, and that the town has implemented the proper procurement policies in terms of recycled content, we'll be in really good shape. So we're working with staff on making sure we meet these requirements. Next slide. So there's also ordinances and policies, and right now we are working with staff, and we'll be bringing back to you the model ordinance later this summer. And we at HF&H, the firm that I actually work for, developed the model ordinance for CalRecycle. So we're taking that and then tailoring it into each of the member agencies. Again, the importance is that we have a consistent policies. Next slide. So the big lift on this is reporting and record keeping. There's an initial compliance report that has to be submitted, and then a significant amount in their annual reporting. At the authority level, we will be maintaining a lot of that data and providing it to the town, just like we right now file the AB 939, the recycling annual reports on behalf of the town. The authority will continue to do that as part of our service to each of the member agencies. And then the implementation record, CalRecycle, we have to have records such that they can give us a specific notice and that they can come and review all of our records. Next slide, please. This is the inspections and enforcement. So starting in January 2022 and annually thereafter, we are to be doing, we got to go to all the commercial multifamily solid waste accounts. There's a prescriptive on amount of how much organics they need to subscribe to. We're going to do quarterly route reviews, and this we're engaging through an amendment that we're working with the current hauler to do a lot of this route reviews on the town's behalf, and then go through and make sure we know who our edible food generators are. It's actual notices of violation are not until 2024, so we have a couple of years of getting people up to speed, doing the route audits, and making sure people are doing the right thing. Next slide, please. So this is one where there are penalties for non-compliance. If AB 619 passes, those get delayed, but there are specific penalties that CalRecycle can impose on the jurisdiction. The key here is the jurisdiction is responsible to do, it's very prescriptive on what each jurisdiction is supposed to do. Good news is we've got you covered, we've got it all down, and you should not be in any issues here. Next slide. So it is an unfunded state mandate that we have to comply with. So for right now, it's rates to pay for it is the direction that we're going, and charging for this organics collection material. Down the road, as we look at the new contract in 2024, 2025, we may look at restructuring the rates, or if there's an opportunity for a 1383 fee. Right now, there's not very many jurisdictions that are doing that, and we're focusing on just the actual rates at this point. Next slide. So where we are is that we've just, in fact, we're bringing it, our board meeting is this Thursday, where we have the amendment to the agreement with WVCNR. So that has now been complete. We're working on the ordinances, working with the town on the procurement policies. And then the rates are also being presented and will at the board meeting on Thursday. So for Los Gatos, it's around $3.60 is the impact from 1383, which is what we pretty much have been saying all along, but that's where we stand. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Before I open to questions for council members, Councilmember Badami, as our representative, would you like to add anything?
I would like to thank Ms. Sheehan for her presentation. She gives them so well, and I look forward to meeting again on Thursday night or late afternoon as we have another presentation. I did want to clarify from Ms. Sheehan then that the average rate is $3.60 a month that we can anticipate. If she could clarify that.
Correct.
For residents.
Yes, for the 35-gallon container, which is what most of your residents have, it's about $3.60. It's actually $3.61 to be specific for most of your residents.
All right, thank you for adding that, Penny. And again, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Council members, other questions? Yes, Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I think this is a really important issue. I mean, the problem is it's a great law, and now we're seeing what the implementation is going to do. I mean, reading the report, the extra amount of work for staff, we're going to have to figure out how that gets done. The final outcome is really good. And what I'm hoping is that people get a greater awareness of how much food sometimes we throw away. And, maybe there will be a virtuous cycle, whereas you suddenly realize as you're collecting actual food that you'll change your habits. But my question is, if people are throwing food away and it's going into their trash container right now, and our rates are based on the size of the trash container, if people start moving their food to their compostable bin and find that they need a smaller trash container, what will be the offset in rate? And if people went to the smaller container and their rates went down, would we then have trouble funding this? Or would it be better to go with a flat fee?
Actually, it's a great question. So the way we have structured it, actually, it is a flat, the collection component is a flat fee because everybody has so the collection component and the processing component is the same for everyone because everybody has the same 64-gallon organics cart. So I didn't want, when we were looking at structuring the rates, normally you just do a flat percentage across all sizes, and it didn't seem equitable for a 96-gallon person to, just because they have a 96-gallon garbage cart doesn't mean that they're necessarily generating a whole lot more organics. There could be diapers or young families or whatever that's causing that. So we did do a flat rate for the biggest chunk of that component.
Yes, do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Risto?
I do. So there would be an opportunity for somebody who felt like this rate increase could be a problem. If they have a larger garbage container, there would then be the possibility to move to a smaller garbage container if
Yes.
they're really conscientious about recycling and composting. That's correct?
Correct. Yes, they will be able to do that. And right now we've structured the rates. The next time around, we might have to, increase all of them. If everybody moves down to a 32-gallon, there's still a amount of fixed costs that still has to be covered to do that. It's similar to the water issue of when people started using less water, we still had the fixed cost.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hughes?
Thank you. And I hope that opportunity to downsize will be publicized when this is rolled out. I had a couple of questions. One is, and I understand that you're helping us implement this, you didn't write the law, but I was curious whether there's been any consideration about the environmental impact of removing the 20,000 or more bins that there are that are of the wrong color, and whether there's an opportunity of probably 20,000 in Los Gatos, are probably millions across the state. It must have some environmental impact. And is there an opportunity to address this through labeling as compared to actually putting the environmental impact of all that plastic?
So another great question. Luckily, we have until 2036 before the containers have to be in the proper color sequence. And for the average life of the containers is 12 to 15 years, depending on kind of how they're treated. So the plan really will be to kind of rotate them out at the point as they're in the replacement side. And the good news is your recycling and your organics are fine. It's just the solid waste container that needs to go from a dark brownishy color to black or a shade of gray.
I had another question, if I may.
Yes, please.
And by the way, I do have a brown organics container, so there are probably a few of those as well. I would hope that there might be some opportunity to address some of this with labeling. My bins are certainly older than 10 or 12 years. The other question I had was about the edible food recycling and generators. Could you clarify who is considered, or what type of entity is considered a generator, and what their responsibilities will be for the safety of food that's being put through this program?
Sure. So to be the generators are looking for in tier, like I said, in tier 1 are your large grocery stores. And like a Safeway. There are also, the businesses that they're also targeting are, now I don't think pre-COVID, of the Googles and that had the large company cafeterias and food providers. So that was really kind of the target area. Again, I'm not sure who all is still doing that at this point. But then we're also working with the county. The county is obviously very involved in this process to make sure that all the food is handled properly. And it will go, there's the generator, there's a transporter that has to take it then to the proper food bank or where it's going to be then ultimately distributed, with all of the records kept very carefully. And again, we're working with the county and county health department. All of that will be definitely part of that process.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I have followed for years, the city of Sunnyvale has kind of curbside food scrap pickup. And initially I was curious why that option wasn't explored, although I did send an email to Director Morley earlier today, where in Sunnyvale, to be clear, they have unusual bins for their garbage where one side collects the food waste and the other side collects the garbage. But the trade-off to that, it sounds like, is you need different trucks and you need different bins. What I was wondering is the balance between that and how the compost is going to be handled, because if people get rid of the wrong kind of food scraps, that's going to contaminate a larger quantity of material. And it also sounds like you need an entirely different type of facility to deal with the compostable material now if there's going to be food in there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'll start at the beginning with Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale is very unique in that they have a 5 material stream collection system. So they have organics, they have recycling, they have garbage, they have the food waste, and they've got one other one, I can think of it, but at any rate, they've got, so their process, first of all, they chose to do the keeping of food waste separate because of the material goes back to their smart station, and then it gets processed into, ultimately ends up in animal feed at a facility in Santa Clara. So that whole process was, that was all designed specifically to feed through that process. We didn't go down that path. That is something, again, we have 2 years left on our current collection contract. So to switch out the whole collection process would be very costly. As well as right now, our garbage and our yard waste go to Guadalupe, because that's the current contract, which is with Waste Management. In our new contract with Waste Management that goes into effect January 1st of 2022, they will now take the green waste that has the food in it from their Guadalupe site, and they're taking it to their site for the Altamont to do all the processing there. So we're able to keep that's why the collection cost was pretty small. It's only about, I think it's $1.80 of the whole amount ties into the collection side, because there's not a lot that had to change there, because the trucks could do the same thing. And so that's the plan, and that contract will start, and it's a 15-year contract. So we are required to have 15 years of composting capacity. And so with that contract, we can check off one box on the organics capacity.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, I will open public testimony. We have one member of the public who wishes to speak. And so anyone else, please raise your hand. If we can listen to Lindley Hogan. And Ms. Hogan, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I just had a question. what would you say to the people who have chickens? Because chickens take care of all of the compost, and that seems like a great alternative. Instead of having us all pay a fee, maybe the ones with chickens, maybe we could opt out. Do you think that's an option?
Okay, Ms. Hogan, we'll take that question and then we'll ask our panelists to respond when we close public comments.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing no hands raised, I will close public testimony. And then Ms. Sheehan, there was the question about our own animals here within town. And I'll see if there's any other questions from our council members.
Sure. At this point, we have not implemented any type of a credit system. The feeling was right now we needed to there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be taken care of and getting everything to meet all the reporting and all the route audits and everything done. So for this current rate setting, we are not addressing that. That could be something we can look at next year. I'm sure there's going to be those that are also home composting. So that's something that we can work with the town staff to determine if that is something we want to consider as we set the rates next year.
Thank you, Ms. Sheehan. Any other questions? And Director Morley and Ms. Chislett, would you like to add anything else before we close this agenda item?
No, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to hear the presentation. I think hopefully it was informative to you, and we'll keep you updated as we continue to progress through the rest of the year and move forward. And of course, you saw that there are some deliverables, and so we'll be bringing back some ordinances for your consideration at a later point.
Absolutely. It was very informative, and I hope our public is well aware of the changes that are coming forward. And so there's no action on this. We received the report and presentation, and thank you very much for the information tonight.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. We now move to agenda item number 14, which is to consider requests for additional funding for special events and destination marketing and other town needs, and direct staff on next steps. Ms. Pravetti, if you could provide today's staff report, that would be great.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Yes, first I'd like to just start by thanking the Chamber of Commerce for all of their innovative and enthusiastic ideas as to how we can come out of COVID together successfully. And I think this item gives us an opportunity to continue the conversation that we've been having all these many months about economic recovery. And what I'd like to do is just frame this from a slightly bigger picture. As you know, the council has been incredibly responsive since the pandemic started to really look at our limited resources and determine how we can share those limited resources with our business community, with our nonprofits, and with other stakeholders and general community. And as has been reported and is documented in the staff report and in the addenda, we've put aside resources to build parklets, to have K-rail, to do economic incentives, to streamline our land use processes, and really also be very generous to our nonprofits and create opportunities to continue to serve those less fortunate here within Los Gatos. Just a note, when I informed the 4 nonprofits of our additional grant, one of them came forward and said, "Thank you so much. There is so much need, and we really appreciate this." So we know that there is more need out there. And so for this reason, we really are asking the council to think about the bigger picture as we consider this very specific request from our chamber. Our chamber's been a fabulous partner with the town of Los Gatos. We collaborate on many things over the years. We've had an annual contract for service. They run our visitor bureau, and it's been a really successful partnership. In addition, the town has great partnerships with other nonprofits, our service clubs, and others. And so as we think through this particular agenda item, I'd like us to also think about those other partners and what the unmet needs might be in our community that perhaps didn't realize that this was on the agenda or that this is being spoken about. As we consider this, we also should keep in mind that we do not yet have a budget adopted for next fiscal year, 21-22. It's going to be a tough budget year. Our Finance Commission is working hard, considering its deliberations and recommendations for Town Council considerations later on this month. And there are some tough choices. And along with that, of course, is the American Rescue Plan Act and the monies that have come forward. Council has already determined some allocations for those monies, but we are still in a pandemic and there is still economic uncertainty. And so I think we need to remain flexible and nimble as we move forward and think about, what are the things that we need to do now and what might we want to maintain some flexibility for the future. In addition, we have an annual grants process where in our budget, we set an amount. We're proposing $150,000 this year. And it's possible that we might want to increase that grant amount given the COVID recovery and perhaps invite our stakeholders to submit grants over the summertime. So that way there's an ability for others to consider access to town funding. So with that, I just want to close that on the bottom of page 7 of your staff report and continue on page 8 are a series of questions for the council's consideration. The first one has to do with principles. And perhaps at this point, it is time for us to think about what are the principles that might guide our future decision-making around economic recovery and around how we help the entire community thrive after the COVID pandemic. Secondly, should we be thinking about our community grant process and maybe increasing that amount? And then the remainder of the questions kind of work through the specific request from our chamber tonight. But let me just close by saying that the town staff from many departments are here to support you in your decision this evening and answer any questions that you have. We value the partnership. Again, with the chamber, I think they've just been fabulous in terms of being an enthusiastic supporter of Los Gatos. And tonight, I think we have the opportunity to think not only about the specific request, but about the larger picture for all of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pravetti. And at this time, are there any questions from council members before I go to our public? Seeing no questions, I will open our public testimony to those in attendance. If you would like to speak tonight, if you could raise your hand so that we make sure that we don't miss anyone before we close public testimony. First speaker is Paul Kent.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be able to address you again. My name is Paul Kent. I'm an advocate for live music events in Los Gatos. I was part of a past team that ran Los Gatos Music in the Park for several years, and I'm currently one of the organizers of the Los Gatos Park Dance event. I'm also a local musician. I'm here tonight to share a perspective on how neighboring cities are thinking about the importance of getting back to offering live music events again as we come out of the pandemic. My musical group, the House Rockers, are working with several municipalities and civic organizations on their return to providing live music events. We currently have a little over a dozen events on our performance calendar for the upcoming summer, most notably in Morgan Hill, Vacaville, Brisbane, and Burlingame. The reasons most consistently mentioned for pushing ahead with music programs are: number 1, to stimulate local economic recovery; number 2, responding to their citizens' desires to have events again; and number 3, take a proactive approach to stimulating a return to normal social activities in their communities. I have been working with Catherine and the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce on having our group perform for an all-town event as part of her event plans at the end of the summer. And I've given some budgeting ideas and marketing ideas to help her host a successful event. What I wanted to share is that these events take time to plan. All the communities that we're working with have decided to be proactive. The events can be executed in a safe way, and there's been quite a bit of innovation with regards to incorporating prior registration processes at scale. Vacaville, for example, is planning on hosting 700 to 900 people at their events. To adhere to current social distancing and capacity requirements with an eye towards what's going to happen on June 15th and reopening and evolving, relaxing of requirements. If planning doesn't start now, the events probably can't happen. So the events are all taking an approach with plan conservatively now, but keep an eye on an evolving, changing landscape. So in closing, Los Gatos has a well-earned reputation as a destination for music events with its festivals, live events, concerts, series, and live music venues. It would be great to see Los Gatos continue to be a leader among local communities by presenting music as part of a plan for civic recovery and a return to normal strategy. It would create foot traffic and revenue for local businesses and certainly mean a lot to the many local live music fans that reside in the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I see several questions of you, Mr. Kent. If you could hold on, Councilmember Hudes and then Councilmember Risto. And Mr. Hudes, you're on mute.
Real quick, we received some information from the chamber just a couple hours ago listing some specifics. I was wondering, Mr. Kent, whether all of the items that you're talking about are included in that list, or are there other music events, specific events that you'd like to see supported by the town?
I'm specifically here to kind of advocate for Catherine's plan because I've had a little bit of input into it. You know, but if you're asking that question, I would love to see more music happen in Los Gatos. I mean, it's just become such a remarkably vibrant place where people come from all over the Bay Area. People look forward to staying in our hotels because there's music in the coffee shop and music at the two local live music venues. So my specific comments are in support of Catherine's plan, but the answer to your question is that Los Gatos is such a wonderful music town. I'd love to advocate for open eyes and open minds as the town returns to normal.
Great, and I just wanted to point out that there is a grant process that might allow for that further opportunity.
And Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kent. I have this summer. All of those set tentatively for after June 15th, or are you live performances now?
July 9th, there'll be an event in Burlingame. So Burlingame has held a very vibrant concert series. They've adopted something where they're moving it from a kind of a central park to a larger baseball field, and they've gone through a registration process, and they draw big circles. Family groups of 10 of no more than 3 families can reserve one of these spaces. So I think the most salient point is that there's been a lot of good creative thinking about how to do these events at scale safely.
Okay, thank you.
And July 9th is actually is the answer for you. So yeah, our first public event is July 9th.
And that's to continue, and that is assuming that California opens up on June 15th, correct?
No, they're prepared to do it with current distancing requirements now at scale. If things open up more, they'll be able to accommodate more participants.
Got it. Thank you.
Certainly.
And one more question, Mr. Kent, Councilmember Badami.
Question for Mr. Kent. We did receive the list from Ms. Summers, and there's a date of September 4th and a fee amount. Where would this be located at? It says for the town. Would that be in the plaza, at the Civic Center, at Oak Meadow Park?
Yeah, I think that's a question for Catherine Summers, but my last understanding was that she has a vision for bringing the town together for an end of summer event that would be in the Civic Center. But please confirm that with Ms. Summers.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kent. Next speaker, Jim Foley.
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Honorable Town Council, Jim Foley, Chamber of Commerce, Board of Directors. Just to start off, we really appreciate the recent action that you have all taken regarding the money for the recovery efforts, and most specifically, really hearing and listening and allocating the money to the Parklet program. It was a significant decision that you guys made. We really appreciate it. It's something that the business community is very grateful for. It's going to make a huge difference this year. So we appreciate that. Through that time and through those conversations, I think you've also heard that the chamber's been making requests for additional funds for the events and for destination marketing. This is also something that the chamber membership and the business community at large agrees is a critical step to get customers back to Los Gatos. So we really appreciate that this item has been put on the agenda for discussion this evening. We were a little confused by the staff report. The staff report talked about a lot of other elements that I think are somewhat related, but not really. It talked a lot about the Visitor and Information Center, and it started talking into details of the recovery money, which I think is a topic that's obviously it's going to be discussed further at further meetings. But what we want to do is kind of set that aside and, understanding that there's going to be more conversation based on discussions at the Finance Commission, including, recovery funds, the ARPA grant, and some other recommendations that we're coming forth with from the chamber. We just wanted to kind of simplify what we're talking about tonight. And it's really just asking to allocate some additional funding for these events and for destination marketing. Other cities are doing the same. These are really good uses of funds, whether they're town funds or recovery related funds, to aid in the economic recovery. These events can be safely executed and they can be grown as we move through the end of the pandemic. So just kind of take a step back, look at the bigger picture. We've got spectators and fans returning to professional sports and music festivals nationwide. It's a good indicator of where we're headed. So this step is going to give Los Gatos a final boost through the summer and fall to truly get back on its feet. And the chamber is prepared to lead both efforts or collaborate with staff in any way to get these two critical measures in place as soon as possible. And I think you'll hear a little bit more from Catherine Summers about the specifics and what we're asking. And I know you've been provided some information that you may have had a chance to look at. I'm happy to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. And you do have a question, Councilmember Hudas.
Thank you. I know that you're referring to a document that was sent in. It unfortunately, it was not a desk item that was able to be reviewed by the public before the meeting. And so I'm wondering if you're planning to articulate the specific proposals and dollars as part of your verbal communication or what, but I do think that without the public being able to look at those items before decisions being made is a bit of a problem. So I don't know if you were planning to get into more detail or whether someone else was.
No, I appreciate the question. I'm speaking fairly broadly. In some of the previous letters that had been remitted by the chamber, we ballparked some funding, events to the tune of $250,000, some, similar level for destination marketing. I'll kind of yield the answer to that to Ms. Summers if she wants to walk through some of the details, but specifically what I'm here to kind of say is we've reached out to the membership, a lot of the business community and the public, and there's a lot of support for requesting more funding for those efforts if it needs to be discussed in another forum or further detailed out. I know the timing that you're pointing out was not ideal, but however this comes together, kind of my conclusion is just to kind of articulate that, and then maybe Ms. Summers wants to elaborate more on the detailed ask, meaning the table or the summary of funding or those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Randy Chen.
Good evening, Council. As you know, the Chamber has asked for money for events to bring more folks to town and hasten our recovery. And you may be asking, why should you give the Chamber money for events? How are we different than any other group, such as Kiwanis or Rotary? We are not asking for money for chamber events such as the Wine Walk, Eat Drink Los Gatos, or carriage rides. We're asking for new community events which will help us recover from the pandemic. Unlike a wine walk or Eat Drink, there is no revenue stream. In addition, the chamber is happy to donate our time in organizing and staffing these events for the good of the community. We're asking for funds to cover the hard costs of putting on these events, such as road closures, permit fees, music, etc. As you know, we do not have the funds to cover these costs, as we've had a year without any events, and our members are hard hit by the pandemic, unable to pay their membership dues. Thus, our own revenue stream has been greatly reduced. As an aside, I can answer the questions on the budget of what we submitted. But I'd also like to give a brief explanation about the Visitor and Information Center, which was in the staff report, and the chamber and the town agreement. So the town's Visitor and Information Center is located in the chamber offices at 10 Station Way. The chamber oversees and manages this. It's fairly common for chambers to do this. The majority of visitor centers in California are funded by the TOT collected by the town. Typically a percentage or exact amount is appropriated to the visitor center each year. This is not the way that we operate in Los Gatos. Our TOT tax goes directly into our general fund. The town has an agreement with the chamber to operate the visitor center for $55,000 a year, and this covers our expenses. The town's grant of $55,000 barely covers the rent, staff, the only public restroom in town, maintenance, and supplies. The town Visitor and Information Center is and should be responsible for destination marketing to attract visitors to town. We have recommended and requested more funding specifically for destination marketing over the last few years. However, we've never received funding for this endeavor. The chamber has used our own funds to pay for any destination marketing efforts thus far. Over the last 2 years, we've paid $36,000 each year to maintain the social media accounts for Experience Los Gatos. The chamber is best positioned to carry out a destination marketing campaign as we are already connected with the stakeholders, hotels, restaurants, and merchants. Our merchant group and our food and wine group meet on a regular basis and include both members and non-members. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. You do have a question, Vice Mayor, and then Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. So the first thing that comes to mind about the destination marketing is we've put a lot of effort into downtown, but there's other parts of Los Gatos, and I'm trying to figure out how much destination marketing is going to affect or help the rest of the business districts in town. My first inclination is it's not, because downtown's a destination, but how do you make Los Gatos Boulevard a destination, or the Downing Center, or so forth? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That is a very good question. So yes, I mean, downtown is the destination. Downtown and our trails and our Vasona, Oak Meadow. You know, we've been fighting this question for a long time. I think part of it will be solved in the general plan when we redo the boulevard and make it more friendly for people to go there. But it helps the whole town, because when downtown thrives, Los Gatos thrives. And that's really the best answer I can give at this point. Destination marketing can encompass many things. It can encourage people to come to Los Gatos, not necessarily to any specific place, not necessarily to downtown, but to enjoy our nature and our mountains and our wineries. So it does go beyond downtown. And it can be things like a $100 gift card if you to any store in Los Gatos. If you stay in Los Gatos, Santa Maria is doing that. Donna will tell you about that a little later. I mean, that could benefit anybody in town. So it does benefit everybody. Obviously, downtown is the destination people go to the most, so it does benefit downtown most.
Maybe follow up then on that one.
Sure.
So that makes me think a little bit. what are you advertising, as a destination, or maybe it's once you arrive in the materials you give them that send them potentially out of the downtown to maybe Aldo's way out on Winchester, or I think there's a nice chocolate shop at the Downing Center or something like that, right? Do you have plans to try to do a little more of that?
Sure, if we got the funds, we would have plans to benefit more than just downtown. There's all kinds of things we could do. We don't have any plans at this very instant, but yes, we would love for everybody in town to benefit and to send people to those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hudis?
Thank you. I just wanted to explore a little bit more the visitor center and the destination marketing and the thought of public-private partnership. So is my understanding correct that the funding for the Visitors Information Center is $55,000, and that doesn't include enough money to do destination marketing? So the chamber puts in from the private sector $36,000 each year for destination marketing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And in fact, that $55,000, when you have a chance to read the letter that was a desk item, there's a budget in there. Our rent, supplies, maintenance, staffing,
Right.
someone comes to about $61,000.
So my question about it is, on an ongoing basis, not just the recovery, but on an ongoing basis, what do you think, or what does the chamber think is a fair public-private partnership with regard to the Visitor Information Center and destination marketing, which I think you mentioned should be a part of that? What's the right split? What's the right general budget?
I mean, I'd say we've been doing the minimum at $36,000 a year. So, 50 to 75 might be a good figure. Again, we don't have any specific plans, so I don't really have costs associated with each item, but we could work with Visit California. We could put information in the airport. We could do advertising.
Sure. If I could just follow up, what is a fair public-private split of the 55 plus the additional 50 to 75 that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
It's public money, and you said that there's some private money, which is 36,000, correct? So
yes, it's the chambers. It's our members.
On an ongoing basis, what is the right public-private split of the 55 plus you said 50 to 75 for destination marketing?
The right split. We could do it 50-50. I don't really have an answer to that, but I mean, all of our members benefit from destination marketing. So obviously it's in our best interest to put money towards it.
Okay, thank you.
That's Mayor.
Thank you for letting you come back to me. Councilmember Hudis made me think a little bit more about this. So Ms. Chen, in the letter from the chamber, they talk about things they define as what they think needs to be done for destination marketing. There's about six bullets there, and as a product manager, I had some exposure to the marketing side of things in my career, and most of what I see there looks reasonable to what you might expect to do some destination marketing. The staff report seems to imply that the visitor center already is destination marketing in a sense. But so my question is, you've listed 6 items. We can skip the staff time one, but there's several items here that are listed for destination marketing. The question is, are those being done in the what do you call it, the visitor center? And specifically, you have website app, right? Is that a different website app? Do we have one now? Search engine investment, are we doing any of that? Advertising, are we doing any advertising? Relaunch of the experience of the social media platforms. My guess is we're not doing any of that. And then brand consulting. I'm not sure what brand consulting is. Maybe you can touch on that. And then I'd like to ask staff this question also later on.
Okay, no, we are not doing any of those things now. The Experience Los Gatos we have been doing for the last year and a half, 2 years. We were paying a social media person to do that, and it was $2,500 a month. In January, we cut that because we just don't have the money to pay for that to the Experience Los Gatos site. But if you look at some of the other towns, so if you're going to somewhere in California, like there's a Visit Santa Maria site or a Visit Healdsburg, we don't have anything like that. That would go a long way to tell people what there is to do in Los Gatos, you know, where to go hiking, where to eat, where to go wine tasting. So, you know, that's one component. You know, social media, optimizing the SEO and all that, something we know nothing about. We have to hire somebody to do that. And so, no, none of these things are happening now. The Experience Los Gatos was our beginnings attempt at destination marketing, and it, you know, we got quite a following, but you know, we just couldn't continue it during the pandemic.
And follow-up question, are any of these items that you've now said you're not doing, are any of those in the contract between the town and the chamber?
No.
So you're not supposed to be providing any of those now?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we do have on our website, you can go and, you know, there's certain things you can find out about Los Gatos, but it's not just that. It's just not a website about that.
Okay, Councilmember Bristow.
Thank you. So I have two questions for Ms. Chen. One is the visitor center is essentially, if I understand it correctly, it's a contract with the town. That's a separate component from the rest of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, it's a contract with the town. So we've worked this out with Mr. Schultz before. That's a third of our office is dedicated to visitor information, and so it's a third of the rent. And then we have a staff. You know, our contract requires that we have someone dedicated to answering the phones and people walking in 40 hours a week, which we do. And we, in our contract, we bill that at minimum wage, which is $13 an hour. You know, we don't have a dedicated, you know, we don't have a separate person that does that. We all do that every day for a lot longer than 40 hours. But so it's in our office, but we're not, you know,
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That's kind of a contract that you do as part of the Chamber of Commerce. That's something that you execute on behalf of the town. I guess the question I have then is, when there were questions about a public-private partnership or what the chamber could also help pay for destination marketing, if this year you brought in no money from dues from your members, when do you anticipate you'll be able to receive dues from members? I mean, do you have any fundraising activities this year? Are you starting to collect membership? Do you have any income besides the visitor center as its own entity?
Yes, we still have membership dues. It's just not at the rate that it was before. But probably about 60% of our revenue is from events, and we haven't had an event since, you know, December 2019. So we don't have that income. We do have an application in for a wine walk on October 2nd. So hopefully we will have an event and have some money. So, and we do have some money tucked away that we, if, that perhaps we could use on destination marketing before we get back to full bore. But we are working with our membership on getting them back when they can pay, and people are starting to pay, and we will be having events. So, certainly within the next year, we should have enough money to do some destination marketing.
Okay.
Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. Ms. Chen, let's say that somebody walked into the Visitor and Information Center, they're hungry and they ask, where's a good place to go to have a good meal? So being that it's also the Chamber of Commerce there with the Visitor Center, would you be incentivized to direct them to restaurants maybe or businesses that aren't necessarily members of the Chamber of Commerce? How does that work?
Well, usually I ask them what they want to eat, and then I tell them all the restaurants, whether they're members or not. Most of the downtown restaurants are members, but I send people to Sprockets all the time for Los Gatos gear, and they're not a member. I send them to Lululemon and Athleta, and they're not members. So yes, we often send them to places that aren't members. If they want Italian, I probably will send them to Pastaria or Santa Nove. One because they're members, and one because I like them. And actually, all the Italian restaurants are members. So.
Speaking of the Italian restaurants, what about Aldo's that's located on Winchester near Lark, that's not within walking distance of the downtown? And you don't know if the visitor that walked in because they're a pedestrian walking or they have a car that might drive down there.
Yeah, so usually I ask them if they're walking or driving, and Aldo's is a member, both Aldo's, the cafe and the one. And, I ask them where they're going, how far they want to go. And then depending on what they say, I send them in the right direction.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Chen. Next speaker, Donna McCurry.
Good evening, Council, and thank you. Donna McCurry representing the Chamber. I just wanted to address a comment that was made in the staff report. On page 3, through conversations with industry professionals and at the recent joint study session of the Town Council and Planning Commissions on February 23rd, 2021, economic recovery broadly is expected to take a hometown approach initially, and that consumers are demonstrating desire to patronize local businesses more than ever, opting to remain close to home and support their local business community. While we agree with it then, we respectfully disagree with that settlement now, in that we have moved past the initial approach. Back in February, it was very important to appeal to the Los Gatos community to support our local businesses and economy. We desperately needed our local residents to start venturing out, shopping and dining. Now the state is loosening restrictions and has a plan to open everything on June 15th. It is more important than ever before to support a destination marketing program. Communities across the state with developed destination campaigns will capitalize on this, and LG won't be able to because we won't have the resources to compete with them. Our local community can only give our businesses a limited economic boost. We must reach beyond our LG borders for an increased economic boost. According to Visit California, and I quote, under normal circumstances, more than 70% of all tourism visits in California are by California residents, making Californians their own powerful economic resource, end quote. This organization has been serving tourism industry for 27 years and operates 17 welcome centers throughout California. Their current marketing campaign is Calling All Californians. The goal is to inspire California residents who are ready to travel and take a statecation and travel safely to help jumpstart the state's economy. Perhaps you've seen their recent advertisements on television. That's our target market. Local communities across the state are reaching out to Californians to visit and support their local economies. As Randy mentioned, Santa Maria Valley, just 65 miles north of Santa Barbara, ran a popular and sold out "We'll Pay You to Visit" campaign, enticing visitors by promoting a $100 community gift card for a 2-night stay. They were able to do that because 100% of their budget is funded through TOT. Competition for tourism dollars is a good thing, but Los Gatos must rise to the challenge. Los Gatos needs to expand our destination marketing to compete for a share of the tourism dollars spent in California by Californians. We cannot rely on our own residents for the critical economic boost needed by our restaurants, shops, hotels, and all our local businesses. Thank you.
Mr. Curry. Any questions? I see no hands raised. Our next speaker is Alice Southwell. I want to note that this is our last hand raised, and so if there's anyone else that would like to speak, please raise your hand. And our next speaker, Alice.
Good evening, Mayors Mariko and Sayok and the Town Council. I know I only have a few minutes, so I'm just going to say that as a GM and my fellow GMs who we've met with the Chamber in the last few weeks have discussed and are supportive of the ARPA funds for destination marketing. And I want to answer any questions because I know Vice Mayor Rob Rennie, you had asked Randy Chen some questions regarding San Jose as a destination and how the leisure market, how Los Gatos could actually benefit from that. The thing is, in the past, business travel, we were successful because San Jose and Santa Clara hotels were successful. Okay, and we as hotels, there's only 4 of us in Los Gatos. Business travel, they would come and they say, okay, love to stay in Los Gatos. It's, you know, Alice, your hotel is a gem. I can get in and out. I don't have to pay the prices as I did in San Jose. Those days are gone. It isn't going to come back for several years. If we do not invest in destination marketing, and it's as simple as just updating the website. Any visitor who wants to come and visit to Los Gatos, if they were just to type "visit Los Gatos," there is no information on that website. I have looked at it. I have researched other websites. I have shared this information with the Chamber. And there is a huge opportunity. Visitors that come to my hotel currently, Leisure Market, is because they were formerly residents here in the Bay Area, or they have family here and they return. We need these funds for even if we just have a website and some of the events and music to bring back people, visitors to come to our town. I truly believe that despite, you know, I think we're positioned in Los Gatos with a lot of unique things that could drive tourism and visitors to our town, and we are better equipped than the downtown of San Jose. We're dealing with two different types of business. Business travel went to San Jose, and we benefited from that, and it's not going to return for a few years. And now leisure travel is going to be here for a while, and we are positioned to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Southwell. Next speaker, Catherine Summers.
Good evening, Council. Like most of you, I barely left my desk today. All these numbers are getting a little bit complicated, and so I was kind of anxious about tonight's meeting. Emails were coming in, people needed talking points, and I was frantically researching what events other towns were doing and what are the best uses for the ARPA funds. I talked with the Carmel Chamber and their Welcome Center, as well as with Visit California. I also was double checking to make sure that the budget numbers I used in your last document I sent were accurate. Most are pretty close. Finally, about an hour ago, I went on a walk as I needed to clear my head and figure out what I was going to say tonight to convince you that the destination marketing and event dollars are desperately needed. I also wanted to, of course, convince you that our budget does not really need any balancing. It can do that on its own. Which brings me back to my walk. Obviously, at the chamber, we talk to a lot of people every day. They stop by the office to tell us what we're doing right and, of course, what we're doing wrong. While they cannot always make it to these meetings, they know that the chamber is planning to what we are planning to say, and they rely on us for speaking up for them. Our board also is representative of all of these businesses in town. We take that responsibility very seriously. So there I was walking, and I saw it and I felt it. Shop owners actually came out of their shops to cheer us on tonight and to wish us good luck. Black Cat hats, an automobile, Rootstock, Jackie O, Sherry Rose, and even people who were dining outside. It was really kind of crazy. And though I felt a lot of responsibility, I also felt a lot of pride. We have a pretty great town, and we have almost persevered through a very tough year. Council, you were really gracious in your gifts to the restaurants, but now you have to invest money in something that will benefit the whole town, corner to corner. We need people to come and check us out and spend money. We need to let people know about our amazing new chocolate shop, Dew Crane, out in the Downing Shopping Center. That great tennis shop at the Los Gatos Village Square, Boulevard Coffee. We need to let people know about the makeover at the Toll House and how great the Best Western is. But we need money to do that. And events, yes, you've heard about them. We need those too, because the chamber staff is willing to organize it all, but we have to get packed people into town. Shop owners and restaurants, these townspeople, they need for you to believe in this town and in your ability to take a risk and to invest in them. And the budget, I don't have much time left. Los Gatos was really lucky. A lot of it because our town staff has been really conservative and was saving all these years. But we don't have to budget that budget. We don't need to balance the budget. It is done, and we can do it again next year. Keep that ARPA money as free as you can and start thinking economic development. This is a once-in-a-lifetime shop for a town like ours. Dream big.
Any questions? Councilmember Hughes.
Thank you. And I mentioned earlier that it's unfortunate that the detailed request from the chamber didn't make it into the public record for residents to really have a look at it before the meeting. So it's going, I think that as we've said, I hope you understand that while we need to look at every item that comes before us, that we have to put appropriate weight depending on our ability to understand it and the ability for the public to have a look at it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I wanted to point out that we have presented all of these ideas at prior council meetings. So the picnic in the parks, the street closure for the Thursday promenade. So I think that while, what was submitted as a desk item and did come in, I think a little bit late. I mean, that document actually came in yesterday before 11, but I don't know how all that works right now. But the point is, I mean, we have all actually discussed the picnic in the parks and the road closures. And so I think and the end of the year party, I think we know what we're sort of asking for. I mean, it was always my intention or my hope all along that we could have actually had a workshop of sorts and talked about all these things. So it's not quite so stilted as a council meeting, because then we could really hash through all the questions at once. So I understand what you're saying, but to go through item by item tonight, I think would have been redundant.
Okay, thanks. I had another question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
We've been talking about destination marketing, and I just wonder if the chamber has a view about how broad that is. Is it something that will just feature individual businesses, or can that also address improving the branding of Los Gatos and maybe including some things, some new images of some of our iconic structures, such as Forbes Mill and the firehouse, maybe helping to achieve the highest use as those come on? I know I see a lot of images of Los Gatos with the same pictures of, the corner drugstore and the Vasona Park Bridge. But is destination marketing an opportunity to kind of improve the branding of Los Gatos with a particular focus on those assets that, we need to get to a higher use?
Definitely. And it's funny that you asked that question, because today we had a great meeting with Jim Rennell, who is your new parking consultant. And he brought up something very similar, was talking about bringing kind of the old railroad, something about the railroad and Station Way, and kind of naming our parking lots. And so that destination marketing dollars could really go towards branding us and making us, we're unique kind of already, but it could really give us an identity. I mean, for 3 years in all the different social media companies with whom the chamber has worked, all of them kept asking, who are we? What is our identity? And so we've kind of, we're still struggling to get there. I mean, we need, I think it's going to take a lot of the stakeholders in town at one table. And that is one thing we have not done yet. I mean, we can't do this in silos and try to figure out who we are. We have to get a group together with some professional direction and kind of figure that out. And that takes time. What we're really talking about tonight is the events and the emergency destination marketing to just try to fill that one gap that you had in your budget, which is the $2.7 million, that is now $700,000 that you collected in TOT. An emergency destination marketing plan we could do and roll out tomorrow with the help of our GMs at the hotels here, because they know how to do it. And we could get that up and running in no time and at least try to fill that gap. And that's what we're asking for tonight. Long term is a different story, and we'll have the money to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I see no other hands raised in our public. And so again, anyone who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. I see no hands raised, so I'm going to close public testimony. And I bring this back to my council, and we can begin with questions. And ultimately, if we can look at page 7 through 9 of the questions staff has posed to you, I think one of the goals is to think about some principles and large values, similar to what we do with our strategic priorities and as we move towards our budget. But first, Vice Mayor.
I think Councilmember Rista was before me, but I'll go ahead if she doesn't mind. So I wanted to just go back and ask staff the question I asked Ms. Chen and confirmed. So there were several, say 5 items that they had listed under destination marketing. Is it staff's in agreement that those are not items that they're supposed to be doing already as part of the agreement with the visitor center?
And who would like to answer that?
Yeah, let me ask Economic Vitality Manager Monica Red to start us off. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Vice Mayor. As was indicated in the desk item that you did receive, there are actually an outline of deliverables that used to be a part of the Chamber of Commerce's scope of services with us. And then as we saw the pandemic coming, as you saw in your staff report, we switched our contract to them over to a subsidy. So really the scope of services is just that small paragraph that was in the staff report that talk about broadly, they talk about a website, advertising. And we did that on purpose to allow flexibility for the chamber this year and through the pandemic, knowing that things would not be the same as they had been in the past, and to expect less precise deliverables and more flexibility for them to serve the community as it would need. So as we look at those items that you had called out, they do have a website. Our website links directly to them. I will say it's been my experience that the chamber does a really great job of promoting all businesses when folks call and ask for things. I think one of the benefits of our chamber is that they are warm and welcoming and very personable. So when somebody calls and says, hey, I'm planning a wedding, they do really talk about the different services. There may be, they may or may not have some agreements with encouraging certain memberships, but I've never seen that to be a real conflict in my experience. The Experience Los Gatos was something that we had put in their contract several years ago. It started as an Instagram page. We used it for our one-way street pilot. And so I think that it's loosely woven in, but to Randy's point, it's not something that's been done recently. And then the other items I would say are things that are not specifically being addressed, but the chamber is doing things for the visitor center as a whole. So as far as fulfilling the contract, I think that is being done.
So if I could follow up, staff has a statement on page 226, third paragraph at the bottom that says it's unclear how a destination marketing campaign may differ from the attraction services currently taking place as part of the agreement services. So if I go back to the items the chamber listed, they seem different to me. Is staff still of the opinion that these items listed are not any different than their current attraction services? I realize staff wrote the report before the chamber wrote this list of things, so maybe your opinion has changed.
Can you reword that question? I'm sorry, I think I missed it.
So let me go back. I'm switching between two documents here. The wording is, it's unclear how a destination marketing campaign may differ from the attraction services currently taking place as part of the agreement for services. And so that was what staff wrote. And then the chamber came out later with, they want to do search engine investment. They want to have an app. I assume they want to improve the website. They want advertising dollars. They want to focus on brand consulting, and they want to relaunch the Experience Los Gatos social media platform. Is it still staff's opinion that this is not any different than what they're doing now?
So because we're not asking for deliverables, when we wrote the report, we did not know exactly what was being done versus what the expansion of the services were. And that's the point of staff's comment there, is that we weren't sure really what the overall goal was. And then I had a conversation with Catherine last week, and what's in the desk item is a little bit different, but then we started to understand that they were looking for a website. They're looking for more of this Visit Los Gatos and weaving it into the California campaign. So those are all things, no, we did not know when we wrote the staff report. So we really didn't have a scope of what was being asked.
Okay, I'm going to give others a chance to ask questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. Right now, I just have one quick question. I saw in the staff report that the town has decided to have a July 4th event, and I'm curious what the decision was behind not having the event. Was it staff time? Was it the price? What the cost of it? Was it concerns about the pandemic, or what was the driver behind that?
So the driver behind not holding 4th of July is really the fact that we're in a pandemic. And while the governor is very optimistic that his criteria will be satisfied in mid-June, we don't know if our local public health department is going to support gatherings at that nature. And as was mentioned by one of the prior speakers, when you plan an event, you need to do so months in advance. And so we felt that it wouldn't be fair to the symphony and some of our other vendors to invite them to participate in an event that we didn't know whether or not we could hold. So we thought it would be best just to hold off, let the pandemic run its course. And then when we're ready, we're hoping that maybe in the fall we'll be ready for Screen on the Green, but we just didn't want to jump. We didn't want to jump too quickly in the event that the state didn't meet their criteria, or that our public health department put on more stringent local requirements. So we thought it was best to just be cautious.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hudis. Councilmember Hudis.
Sorry, I had some thoughts about principles. I don't know whether this is the right time to start talking about that, or whether
Let's see if there's any questions. I do have two questions of staff. Councilmember Badami, any questions before we begin discussion?
Not at this time.
The two questions I have, and either the vice mayor or town manager can answer. I know as we began the year, we asked our Community Health and Senior Services Commission to look at the various services and then analyze the gap. And I'm wondering the status of that. And because I know that also will, I believe, lead to some budgetary requests as well. And so that was my first question. And then the second is, Ms. Pravetti, you mentioned that some of your service providers had responded. And I'm wondering if we have an analysis from West Valley on any increased needs that they're anticipating. And the context of that is just working with colleagues in other cities, increasing families, increasing number of families that are becoming homeless and needing more food assistance. And so I'm curious if West Valley has given you any sense of what they are seeing as we move through this pandemic. Huh?
Thank you, Mayor, for those two questions. I'll get started, and then if I may ask Assistant Town Manager Arn Andrews to join me here. Our Community Health and Senior Services Commission took council's direction very seriously. They've been meeting and having a lot of special meetings to really understand all of the services currently being provided by various service providers, as well as identifying any gaps. They are working on a deliverable for council consideration, which will identify gaps. At this point, we aren't certain that we're going to have a budgetary request. However, this question did come up at the last Finance Commission meeting, so I think we need to be prepared for the eventuality of perhaps there being a budgetary component to what we find in terms of service gaps as a result of this analysis, and also to promote the strategic priority of enhanced senior services as council directed. Secondly, I have not heard from West Valley Community Services, actually. I know they're very busy, and I receive a lot of their email calls for help. So I suspect that they are seeing an increase in demand for their services. And as we move through the pandemic, I think what we're finding is that the needs are changing. And I think we don't know exactly what all of the future needs are going to be, but I think this is still a very evolving and dynamic circumstance. But I believe Mr. Andrews has been in closer contact with Mr. Sello and may have more data for council's consideration. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And given the mayor and the council's direction, as the town manager mentioned, we've been having presenters every other week at the Community Health and Senior Service Commission. One of our presenters was Josh Selo, the executive director for West Valley. And as a service provider in the area, but also a recipient of grant funds from the town, he did provide a presentation on, year over year kind of differences in engagement with the town. With COVID, there was definitely an increase in need, not just a monetary increase, but also an increase in families seeking to utilize services, and these are specific to Los Gatos. That being said, one of the questions we ask every service provider is, were you able to meet the need, or were you not able to meet the need because you don't have significant organizational capacity to do it, or you don't have the proper finances to do it? And every service provider has said they were able to meet the need organizationally and with finances. And that was true of Live Oak Senior Nutrition and others. That being said, we have our normal grant program where they are always one of the largest recipients in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. In addition, they have a contract with our community development department for rental assistance that I believe is in the $15,000 range. Council, at the very beginning of the pandemic, provided another $10,000 in funding through the council's own contingency fund. And then one of the last things we did, the council did, was add another $15,000. So to date, they've received approximately $65,000 from the town for this year. And so that was one of the ways they were able to meet the need in the town. during the presentation, there was not a expression given of we need more funding. It was more just showing us what the impacts were to our town.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, Councilmember Hudis.
No, I was just waiting for the opportunity to talk about principles. So just let me know when.
I see no other questions, so go ahead and kick us off. Huh?
Okay, thanks. And I want to really acknowledge staff thinking about this and asking that question, because I think it's one that can guide us as we start to make individual decisions about requests. So I, in listening to Vice Mayor Rennie and Councilmember Badami, it seems as though there's one principle that perhaps we should allocate funds in an objective manner to benefit all of the residents and all areas of town. So that was one that I had. I had a second one, which we haven't talked about a lot, and that is to encourage opportunities and events to build synergy between our office tech companies and workforce with our local restaurant retail businesses. So perhaps we could have events that are local to some of the larger office tech companies in town and give some opportunities to our businesses. The third one I've alluded to already a bit, which is to take a broad view of destination marketing, to use it as an opportunity to improve the branding of Los Gatos and our historic heritage and our iconic structures, including Forbes Mill and the firehouse, so that we can also achieve highest use of these wonderful resources with our new tenants. And then finally, the fourth one I had, which is, I'm not sure if it's a principle, but it's a concern and something that I think we need to think about as we allocate and work in a public-private partnership with the chamber. And that's to avoid conflicts of interest with the chamber, as they are, I believe, a 501c6, and they do make political endorsements. And that may be just a plea for help from our town attorney on that, but it does seem to me that it's a principle we need to keep in mind. So those were the four that I thought about so far.
Thank you for kicking us off. And Vice Mayor Rennie.
So thank you, Mayor. I'll make my high-level thoughts. So starting with the destination marketing, I think we should do something to help there. And the biggest reason is that it helps our hotels. The things we've done so far are less directly helping our hotels, and they're probably been hurt the worst of anything. And they, it actually does pay us back money, as mentioned with the DOT tax. So it makes sense to me to put some of the ARPA funds into destination marketing, to help that sector. I would also, we could say, the chamber was specific on the items I mentioned. There's questions from staff about how do we separate it out? Well, we could write it separately that here's funding to do these items listed, which are separate from the visitor center items. And I would add something in there that says that some of this effort needs to be focused on other parts of the town also, whether it's with materials when people arrive or things we promote through the destination marketing. But that, we could put that on as a requirement. In terms of the events, we've got staff saying that it's not, ARPA funds are not available for it, and disagreements from others on that. I'm not sure how we go there, but one thing that really comes to mind to me on the whole events thing is the 60-day requirement. If we want, I guess it comes down to, we've got momentum going. We want to keep the momentum going. We don't want to hamstring. We've invested. We're getting activity. We're getting economic activity. Let's keep it going. The COVID world is actually changing very rapidly. for the positive. And I think that we want to be able to adjust with it. So the 60 days is a problem, right? If we say, well, you got to plan an event 60 days, well, we you know, in a month from now, there may be no restrictions and you can have a bigger event or something with more mixing. Yet we don't have time to put one on this summer because we have that restriction. So that, you know, I'm sure staff can comment on, you know, how we could be faster than 60 days, but it seems to me that that's important to be able to move faster. I know staff wants to take the conservative route of, you know, well, we can't plan an event because we don't know what the requirements are going to be. Well, we can plan an event that is going to be somewhat flexible, or we could plan it to the current county restrictions, but know that it may very likely change to something that's less restrictive. And so plan it in a way that we can be flexible in how many people or how we do the spaces. Somebody gave us an idea of, you know, families could gather in a circle kind of thing. You know, maybe there's some other ideas to throw in there. So again, I support this idea of let's keep the momentum going. Let's be flexible. And I'm not opposed to putting some money into events. Also, I mentioned we should put some money in. I'm not going to say any dollar numbers yet. Let's hear what the other council members think on that. I think you mentioned closing, is it each week for, 1 day a week for the duration of the summer? I think that is more plausible than you think in terms of disruption. If it's done late enough in the day, after some of the commute traffic has gone home, after the high school traffic has gone home, I think it's more plausible. There's a little bit of, comparison to the one way, but that's much different because the problem with the one way really came when the high school started letting out and university got jammed. I think we can plan around that. So I'm not opposed to allowing the closure 1 day a week kind of idea, as long as it avoids those high traffic times. I may have missed something, but I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. Councilmember Rennie hit a lot of the points I was going to make, but one of the things I was thinking about with TOT, I mean, we know that the main reason people were staying at our hotels in Los Gatos was for business travel. That is the one main area where we took a financial hit, and it doesn't look like that's going to recover. And I don't see anything as a town that we can do to get that business travel back. That's out of our control. But I do think that Los Gatos is a really, really charming place. And with effort, it would be great to turn around or put a push on destination marketing and see if that doesn't recover. That would more than pay for itself if the TOT went up. And so I feel like that's something that can balance out. If it goes on for several months and people aren't coming here, then maybe we pivot on that. But I think that is an investment in a revenue source. In terms of the downtown events, I think it's really important to have our events this summer. Other communities are doing it. And I'm not saying, oh, well, they're doing it, we should. But this could be a really lost opportunity if we stay shut down after, as a council, we've been really generous with assisting businesses in terms of getting their semi-permanent parklets going. We only have this summer with the temporary parklets, and that ends in September. But getting people to downtown Los Gatos, because we know downtown doesn't survive just on our residents. We know our residents don't just stay in Los Gatos. Bringing people back in a nice, open, safe way makes a lot of sense to me. I kind of view the chamber as a contractor. And so if they're putting together this idea of the Thursday promenades, that is not a fundraiser for them. I haven't heard anything about it. I wouldn't be in favor of seeing vendor booths or anything in the street, but essentially closing the street for a period of time from 3 to 8 will not have the impacts that the one-way pilot had, which went all day, every day for a period of time. It won't impact loading and deliveries. It won't impact school traffic because school's out in the summer. And, it won't have any negative synergy with beach traffic because it's on a Thursday. So I think those traffic issues are not major. I think the Chamber of Commerce has done the outreach on that. And it looks like they've got a program that's kind of open and available. And I know that in the rare times that we've had that street closed, it's been a really wonderful thing. I remember about 10 or 12 years ago when, maybe it was 15 or 20 years ago, when Santa Cruz Avenue was paved, and while it was being striped, it was closed to cars. And I think it was a weekend evening. Everybody just spontaneously started walking downtown, and it was really wonderful. So I think not adding vendor booths or not having like a big event there, but actually closing that street and having sort of a close to traffic event that's similar to the holiday shopping that was done a few years ago, where it's just easier to get around. I think it just sounds wonderful. And I would like to see that 60-day requirement waived if possible. That's what I've got for the moment. But, I know Los Altos has started their first Fridays already. I have a friend who plays in a band, and they played there in April, and they're having it this Friday. So I would hate to see Los Gatos stay closed while everyone else is moving forward.
Thank you. And I'll share, yes, Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. I still would like to get some input from the Finance Commission, and perhaps Vice Mayor Rennie or Councilmember Hudis can chime in, because there's still some controversy over whether the ARPA funds qualify or not for use in special event subsidies. So I would like to get some clarification on that, because the destination marketing, there's a request for 150,000, and I don't know what route Vice Mayor Rennie was going. He didn't put a dollar amount on it, but that's something that the public did not have privy to because of the lateness in the desk item. I can see the need for some destination marketing. I don't know what amount would be appropriate. As far as special events being held by the town, I'd like for them to be special. So when they're special, I don't think you do them with frequency, because then they become commonplace and they're not so special anymore. You can't do them so grand to scale, nor would it cause the draw. It just would become commonplace. So I have a little bit of concern about every week, in particular, doing a street closure. I'm not sure of the outreach that was done with the surrounding neighborhoods. I know Ms. Summers said that she had maybe went door to door with the residents on University Avenue. But there's other people throughout town that might be impacted by the street closure. And we still have people back to work that are commuting, and they go home over the hill to their homes over the hill, and they're used to driving on North Santa Cruz Ave. And that would be when they're done at the workday, which might be 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. So I'm on the fence about those weekly street closures. I would rather start out slowly with that to make sure that they are successful. I would hate to commit to that and you don't have the draw, and it's been a disappointment and a waste of money. Also too, I have to keep in mind that closing the street, you prevent access for the food delivery and food pickup with Grubhub, Uber Eats. So that might create a problem. We don't really have our wayfinding in place. You still have businesses that do have evening hours that aren't retail and dining. There are offices in town and personal services that have late afternoon and early evening appointments. So that could create a problem. Granted, it might create a little bit of synergy because they might go to dinner, have a drink. I don't know, but these are things that I've been kind of tossing around and would like to get input from the two remaining council members, excuse me, Mayor and Council Member Hudis on their thoughts on this.
Councilmember Hudis.
Just to respond specifically to the street closures, I think it has the potential of being a great idea, but I also think that committing to 14 weeks of it at this point might be a little bit risky. And so I think it would be better for the reasons that Councilmember Badami mentioned to do a bit of an experiment with it, maybe commit to, 4 or 6 of them, and maybe with the chamber, we could work out whether it's, weekly or once a month or whatever it is, so that we can learn about the impacts. I am concerned about negative impacts on certain kinds of businesses, the service businesses in particular, who often operate till, 7, 8 o'clock. And there are just a number of things that I think it'd be good to try it and learn from it before we establish it for the entire summer.
And Mr. Schultz, I see you turned on your camera. There was a question on the use of ARPA funds, whether that's you or Mr. Andrews, who's been following this fairly carefully. Would anyone like to just address that so that we answer that question?
If you'd like, I can start first, and then if anybody else has any other comments. So the reason staff is cautious on this is because there has not been any additional guidance. And so we're still working within the parameters of the initial 4 eligibility uses. And so I'll read the use where we think destination marketing might fit. But this is why we're cautious as to whether or not events will fit. So the language actually says, to respond to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits. And I'll pause there for a second. This is where we think the additional grants to the nonprofits, the expansion of the Parklet program fit, because that would be consistent with assistance to small businesses and nonprofits. And then it goes on to say, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. And so it's that last piece, hospitality, where we think destination marketing might fit. But until we get better definitions on what they mean by tourism, this is why we're still hesitant to commit to events as being an eligible use.
Thank you. And I'll go, yes, Mr. Hudis?
Just real quick as a follow-up, I would imagine other communities that are looking at spending ARPA money have come across the same question about events. I wonder if we've collected any information about other communities with that regard to that issue.
In my peer group, when we discuss ARPA funds, some communities who were impacted much heavier than we were, for instance, Palo Alto is an example, Milpitas, they're using the majority of the funds for revenue replacement because they need to do that to secure their workforce. There's a couple communities like ourselves who have the latitude because of our finances not being as insecure to start to do other things. I've yet to hear people go down the event road, partially because, unless you do a model that was explained earlier, where you have a contained area with the ability to do reserved seating, that's still the only thing that's allowed under the current guidelines. And so I believe that's why the speaker said Burlingame or somewhere is using a baseball field, because it's a way they can secure an environment. They're going to use circles to create social distancing as opposed to seating. And so that's still another kind of piece of uncertainty that we're waiting to see just how the guidelines move. If the guidelines move in a direction of events, and my guess is our economic vitality manager and our town manager will be more than happy to embrace events, but similar to the ARPA guidelines, we just don't have that type of clarity to plan that far ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think this is going to be a question for the whole state, not just for our local neighboring municipalities, though. So if any municipalities are doing this with ARPA funds, we probably ought to find out about it.
Yeah. And And when the governor first issued his statement on June 15th, he talked about these seated arenas and seated concert halls. He specifically called out Coachella as a venue that they had to do more research on because it's not conducive to social distancing and seating and containing the crowd. And so my guess is at some point, the state will come out with guidance on kind of those more organic events. And hopefully that'll help us.
And I'll go ahead and share some of my large principles as well that the council, that staff has asked and other council members have shared. I think I believe almost all of us touched on it, is the equitable piece. And I know that's something that's very important to me. It's a strategic priority of ours, is how do we allocate these resources in an equitable manner? We could talk about doing that around town and all the different business districts, but I'm also trying to be mindful of our hardest hit residents as well, which is why I asked about the question of how are what is West Valley seeing, and how do we ensure that our residents that are most vulnerable will have the resources that they need. Again, we don't know. People are adapting at different stages of this reentry, and I'm seeing, at least in other cities, that we're seeing more homeless people, we're seeing more people hungry, we're seeing a lot more seniors, frankly, that are in mental health needs. And I just want to make sure that we're mindful that we may have to adapt to that need, and do we have the resources for that? In terms of events, I'm supportive of having events. What I'd ask our staff to do, when we had our public events, special permit discussions, there were several people that we partner with, all of our service clubs that do events. And again, how do we do this equitably so that those that are interested in planning any events and may need assistance, how do we distribute those funds? I actually like the idea of using the community grant process, maybe not necessarily waiting until then, but setting up a system so that it is competitive and that people are well aware that this is an opportunity. We have a set amount, and it gives just an even playing field for everyone that may be interested in funds. And with the destination marketing, the only thing I would ask our staff as that issue gets worked out is, again, to help us better understand what exactly that is. Marketing, branding, that could be something as small as 100,000. That could also grow into a 500,000. And so I think for any of these big, large ideas, we need to be very mindful what are the metrics, what are the variables, so that at the end of this period, we're not looking at each other saying, that's not what I wanted. That's not the destination. That's not the target audience. And so that's where I would really ask our economic vitality manager and town manager to really have those discussions so that it's clear who the target audience is and what is our expectation, and how that benefits the entire town. I'm still, we have all these pieces. I'm mindful that the Finance Commission has to finish its work. We have our budget meeting on the 18th. How do all these pieces come together? And so while I've provided these comments, I'm going to now ask Manager Pravetti the process, because ultimately a budget has to come back to us, and we can give you our wish list, but ultimately we have to be able to it's a trade-off. And how does staff anticipate making those trade-offs in the next 2 weeks so that we understand the process moving forward?
Thank you for the question. I think the first step is to see what are going to be the recommendations coming out of the Finance Commission. Just as a little bit of a preview, I know many of you have been observers to those meetings. But there's been a fair amount of conversation about how do we sustainably fund our capital improvement program, because making sure that we maintain the assets of the town and the health of the town is really critical to our overall well-being, as well as our operating and everyday service delivery. So I believe you will see recommendations to strengthen the capital budget a little bit more than what the original proposal was coming from the manager's office. They're still debating about the operating budget. We haven't really seen too many proposals yet or specific recommendations, but I suspect they're going to be very thoughtful about where we might need to trim expenses and then allocate our remaining revenues very carefully. So I suspect it will be quite an interesting conversation. So it's possible then that on the 18th, when you consider the budget, you'll have the original budget proposal before you, and then you'll have a series of recommendations from the Finance Commission. And then staff has done some additional work. So we are going to be asking the council to take very deliberate action on the Measure G dedicated Los Gatos sales tax proceeds. So that way we have very definitive recommendations from the Finance Committee on that, and then subsequent council actions as well regarding Measure G. So this budget discussion is going to be a little bit more involved. We also need the council to think about our donation policy in light of some of the other requests that came during our commission study sessions. So you're going to have a lot to work through, and we will be trying to work through a series of questions for the council for its budget hearing, so that way you can get through it in a logical manner. But I will say that money is tight, and I think the council has been very generous in terms of its initial direction for the use of the ARPA money. Staff's working very hard to implement the economic recovery direction you've already given us. And I think what we can do as a next step, if we don't have any motions coming from tonight, is we can try and define destination marketing more specifically. So that way, you know what the deliverables could be in the immediate term. We can also look at events in terms of what might be viable. I think there were some parameters that came out, like no booths, if we close the street, how do we contain and manage crowds? So there's some very practical things. 60 days, is in our ordinance to allow us to have time to coordinate with not only our other departments, but also with the fire department. And while we are already considering and evaluating special event permits, we also know that we are in a changing environment. So we have issued special event permits. So I think Easter time was a great example where where the event organizers modified the hippity hop to be COVID safe. So we're happy to work with event organizers to do fun things over the summer. I think the question is, what are going to be the available town resources to support events? And that's really the uncertainty, because if money is being moved from operating to capital, then we're going to have we're going to still need to solve a budget gap. So it kind of remains to be seen how the Finance Commission is going to bring forth a full package to the council. So I apologize for the long-winded answer, but there's still so many variables that are in play tonight. Thank you.
I do see, I'll recognize you, Councilmember Hudis, and I'm going to channel Mr. John Shepherdson. But one thing I do want to point out is just consequences. And so while we love people enjoying dining outdoors and our parklets, I'm seeing a need for increased trash pickup and sidewalk cleaning. And so those are things like, if we can start to build into the budget as well, because again, with increased usage means increased wear, increased public works work. And I just want to be mindful that there's always ancillary costs associated with things. So Councilmember Hudis.
No, I actually had a question for you, Mayor, about the thought about using the community grant process, which I think is, adds a lot of structure and helps to deal with the equity issue and getting an equitable allocation. Are you suggesting that maybe we do that sooner and maybe fund it more? Or did you have any, ideas about how we might use that more effectively?
Yes, and to Ms. Pravetti's point, I know that in the proposed budget that the Finance Commission is reviewing, there is increased numbers in there. And so again, I think what we've done different in the past was not only do we provide to our service providers, but we've also given special buckets, for individuals who have a creative idea, for community events such as these. I think the reason behind that, the previous council just wanted to provide an open period so that anyone that may be interested in funding from the town knew when that open period was, what the qualifications and what the metrics were for being judged, and that it seemed we just leveled the playing field. I like that concept. I would support that. Manager Pravetti, I know that remind me again the process timing. We have all these different timing tables. When does that occur?
So the first step is identifying the total pot of money available for community grants, which will be part of the conversation on May 18th. And if memory serves, I believe we're recommending 150,000 across all categories. I do see Director Baker is with us. And I think we fine-tuned the process last year for 2020. So let me see if I may, if Mr. Baker has any comments about what a timeline might look like for 2021. Thank you.
Yes, so we have essentially all the templates and applications ready to go. As soon as the budget is passed would be when those would probably be released. So we could have, if the budget is passed, approved on time as we move into the next fiscal year, we could have those applications out July 1st. We could potentially put the applications out sooner than that. However, not having the budget approved would feel a little odd there. So those are ready to go out really as soon as the budget is approved.
And Director Baker, can you remind me, we do give funds out for events, correct?
So events also qualify. They're judged within the same framework. So we have a judging rubric, and it could be events, community events, it could be community vitality, it could be arts, it could be human services. Any of those things are eligible, and they all fall into the same rubric. So as long as the grant is well written and it has a good chance of success and being executed, then it gets judged higher. So events would be under that also. One thing that you may want to consider, though, would be the amounts of the individual grants. So last year, breaking the total amount that we had down, in order to have enough grants to go out, we capped the amount at $7,500 per grant. For some organizations, that was a good amount of money. I think with some of the numbers that have been proposed tonight, that might look like a limiting number. So I don't have a recommendation one way or the other on that, other than to say that a big pot of money divided among many grant applicants or recipients ends up being a smaller number fairly quickly.
For sure. Councilmember Hudis?
No, whenever you think it's appropriate, I feel like I could put some of this into a motion.
Okay, I do think it's appropriate, unless there are questions. I see no hands raised for questions. So yes, Councilmember Hudis.
So I wanted to address in the motion the principles, and I would assume that there would be maybe some other more detailed things that might follow. But let me try these. It's grown to about 6 after the discussion, but maybe we could consolidate. So let me start with the broadest one first, which is to allocate funds in an equitable and objective manner to benefit all of the residents and all areas of town. The second one is to enthusiastically support events in a flexible manner and avoid high traffic times with further guidance of the ability to fund these with ARPA. The third one is to utilize the community grant process, particularly the equitable allocation, looking at the total budget and moving the time frame along as it's practical. The fourth one, which would be to include destination marketing and to use it to improve the branding of Los Gatos and our historic heritage and iconic structures, but to do so with a clear definition of scope with help from staff. The fifth one is to encourage opportunities and events to build synergy between our office tech companies and the workforce with local businesses, local restaurants and retail businesses. And the last one is to avoid conflicts of interest with the chamber as we go through this allocation process and take their valuable input and operate in a public-private partnership in some ways with them, but to make sure we do so by avoiding any conflicts of interest. So those were the, I believe, 6 items that I've heard about and we've been talking about.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Councilmember Badami?
I second the motion.
Okay. And so any questions to the motion? Councilmember Risto?
I have a question to the motion. This question about guiding principles having specifically to do with destination marketing and events. I don't understand how the grant process would fall into that because clearly nothing will happen with $7,000. So I'm not sure. Are we talking?
So
I'm not following.
Maybe I clarify. I included it as 2 different principles. One is to use the community grant process and to help with our economic recovery and particularly dealing with the equitable allocation issue, but recognizing that there's some, there were some things we may want to do sooner than that process allows. And the second is to, principle is to include destination marketing in what we do and use it to improve the branding of Los Gatos and our historic heritages and iconic structures with a clear definition of scope and help from staff in defining that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Vice Mayor, your hand is up.
Yeah, let me suggest a friendly amendment to one of them. You said events funding, staff clarify through ARPA. I think that we should change it to ask staff, and maybe we need to come up with a number that they're looking for. But there's ways to fund it not using ARPA, but put ARPA in other things, for example, right? The funding could come out of our other recovery fund. It could come out of the funds from the sale of the Winchester property. We could put ARPA funds into our general fund as a replacement for the TOT that we lost, and then use it back around that way to do it. So there's many ways to get that funding. So I would just suggest that maybe you want to change the wording a little bit, that it doesn't have to be ARPA, but to figure out how we make it work.
Sure, happy to take a stab at that one and say basically to enthusiastically support events in a flexible manner and avoid high traffic times with available resources to the town and with the possibility of using ARPA funds pending further guidance from the town, but not exclusively ARPA funding for the events.
And the seconder of the motion? Would you accept that?
Yes, the seconder of the motion, me, accepts the amendment.
Thank you. Any other questions to the motion? And I actually have a question as well, specific to the events. And would we enthusiastically encourage all of our community partners that normally put together events such as our service clubs and other service providers?
Yes, that was my intention, not to specifically direct it only to the list that we've gotten from the chamber, but all of our community partners.
Okay, and then to the seconder of the motion.
I accept.
Okay, and Councilmember Risto?
So I have a question about that. Will we distinguish between events that are fundraisers for the organization putting it on and those that are not?
Well, my intention was to propose a principle that we could use to guide further specific decisions and maybe motions. But I hadn't gotten to that level of detail in the motion.
Okay, so we're keeping it higher up right now. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and any other questions to the motion? With understanding that there are no details such as dollar amounts. So. Okay, Councilmember Hudis, your hand is still raised. So would you like to okay.
I'm good.
And so any, now that we've asked questions, any comments to the motion? Okay, so I'll call the question. Real quick, staff, any questions so that we're all on the same page?
No, this is fine. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember Hudis?
Aye.
Councilmember Badami?
Aye.
Councilmember Risto?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rennie?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. And so the principles that have been articulated, 6 passes unanimously. And yes, Vice Mayor Rennie.
So Mayor, I'd like to make another motion, see how this works. My thought process is on, specifically on the events we're talking about, whether we allow the weekly shutdowns or not. And I heard some discussion of we should try, a smaller number, 6 to 8, I think I heard, and so forth. And we also heard that it's difficult to do this faster than 60 days. So what that tells me is maybe we want to make a motion approving, or, let me say, I'll make a motion that we allow, let's call it 7 Thursday night closures over the summer. At this point, we're not putting money into it, I guess, but I'm thinking it allows planning to, if we pass this, it allows planning to start moving forward because we need so much time to get ready for something. I'm worried about waiting another 2 weeks and then maybe another 2 weeks after that and so forth. So that's why I'm suggesting a motion on this now.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Councilmember Hudis.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and are there any questions to the motion? So I actually do have a question to Vice Mayor. You made a point to say there's no money attached to it. And so is your intent to make that commitment that 7 will occur without knowing what the cost is and how that will be paid for?
I'm willing to attach some money to it if that helps. I'm sensing some hesitancy to attach money to things at this point, and that's why I said it that way. Looking at their chart, if we put 100,000 into events, they could do everything on that list, I think, for 7 times, and the other ones that were listed in the letter, except for the Christmas stuff, which is much further off in the future. So if you like, I could add to the motion that we would, through Councilmember Hudis's principle of finding the money, that we look for $100,000 for events.
Okay, and so as the seconder of the motion, Mr. Hudis?
I wonder if I could just get a little clarification.
Sure. And who would the clarification be from?
From the Vice Mayor. I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes. And so Mr. Rennie, if you could clarify and restate your motion, please.
All right. So again, you were asking, it sort of makes sense to tie some money to it. when I look at what was proposed for events, there was 140,000 for 14 events. So, you know, for about 70,000, you could maybe do those. There's a few odds and ends, so maybe it's a little more than that. Then they had some picnic in the parks. They had townwide celebrations. These are all small numbers. Street pole banners, cultural events in the spring. I figure for 100,000, they could do all of those items. If you wanted to make it a smaller number at this point, that's fine. My guess is they could do for 80,000, they could probably for sure be able to do those 7 and maybe some others. So I'm not hard and fast on this. I'm looking for some agreement from the council on what they want to do.
Okay. And so before we begin that process of discussion, Councilmember Hudis as the seconder.
So I'm still not exactly clear on what the motion is. I would not be in support of funding things that haven't had the opportunity to have public scrutiny. And so I'm concerned if we are opening this to a full list of events that really the public hasn't had the opportunity to, I'd be concerned. If the motion is strictly about street closure and putting $70,000 or $80,000 to that, I would be supportive of that.
That I can make that my motion. That's fine. We'll call it $80,000 for 7 street closures during the summer.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. So the motion now has changed to 8 street closures with 70 to 80,000. No, I'm sorry. Can you please restate that?
It was 7 street closures is what everybody seems to be okay with. And tying $80,000 to it, that staff will figure out the best way from where that comes from.
Okay, and so Councilmember Badami.
Question for the maker of the motion. Summer can mean slightly different times, you know, to different people. So can we put an exact start and end date to it? Because summer can mean going through September, and it might impact, okay, are we going to do 4 street closures for the month of June every week, or are we going to stagger them out? Maybe we can have like an end date, October 1st, September 30th, summer meaning the end of August. What's the time frame?
So how about if I amend the motion that they have to be completed by October 1st, and the start date's really going to be dependent on when staff can organize it with them, right? We know that there's some organizing time, and we're already in the beginning of May. So my guess is starting in June might even be challenging.
Thank you.
The seconder of the motion, there's been another amendment to end at October 1st.
Yes, I will accept that and make a comment that it might be a good idea to work with the chamber, understanding that this is a more limited number, and get their input about the specific schedule, about whether they want to do, you know, one every week for a little while and figure it out, or spread it. But I agree with the October one. Okay.
Any further questions to the motion? I actually have more. I actually have a question. And I'm going to ask our town attorney, Robert Rules of Order. I have a question of staff. Am I allowed to ask question of staff while there's a motion?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So if, let's say we have 7 for 80,000, let's say pretend one event, one street closure cost 80,000. What is our limiting factors now? Is it the cost or is the event? Like, what did we commit to?
The cost.
The cost. Okay, so that's my question. And so, Vice Mayor, is that your understanding as well then, that the limiting factor is the 80,000?
My understanding is we would contribute 80,000. We're allowing 7 of them to occur. If the chamber magically came up with more money, they could still do up to 7 because that's what we've allowed.
Okay, but our limiting contribution is 80,000.
Correct.
Okay, and seconder, is that your understanding of the motion?
That's my understanding.
Okay, any other questions? I'll call the question. Councilmember Badami?
Aye.
Councilmember Risto,
Aye.
Vice Mayor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hudis,
Aye.
and I will vote aye on this as well. And so we have another motion passed unanimously. Thank you. And so council members, any other motions that one feels inclined to do, or again, we have an ability to discuss and comment as the budget comes through as well in 2 weeks. So yes, Councilmember Hudis and then Councilmember Risto. Mr. Hudis, you're on mute.
My overall comment is that I think there's some great ideas that came from the chamber that should be looked at in more detail in the light of the budget and in the light of better public access to that information. So I wouldn't be very comfortable with going much beyond at this point if we're getting into the details of some things that were submitted as a desk item and the public hasn't had an opportunity, particularly given the principle that we adopted to, make sure it's equitable across all areas of town. We want to make sure that our residents have the opportunity to weigh in on some of the other really good ideas that are in there.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I agree. I think the street closures are a good start. I did have a question. This doesn't cover the picnics in the park, and I thought that had been discussed with the Parks Commission. And I have no idea. I didn't know if this is a town event, a chamber event, or whatever. But it sounds like we're not covering that. I really look forward to seeing how the Finance Commission looks at the budget, looks at all the issues that we have to weigh. And I don't feel comfortable moving forward with any other, trying to put dollar amounts around destination marketing or anything yet. I would like to hear what the Finance Commission thinks about that. I do think it's important that we look at ways to recover TOT, but I don't think we can figure that out tonight.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor.
I'm not going to make any more motions, but I would, I guess I'm expecting staff to come. I'm in support of also looking at giving, granting more money to some of the nonprofits that support people in town, like we've done before, or other options. So I'm expecting we might see, we keep talking about equity. So I'm expecting staff to come back with some suggestions at budget time for other places to support that equity across Los Gatos that aren't necessarily the business community.
And I can address one area. So one of the council's strategic priorities we discussed earlier is senior services. The council has directed me to bring commission recommendations to them also on June 15th. And just based on the discussions to date, there will be recommendations that probably will have a monetary component. I don't think it's going to be anything exorbitant, but where we are starting to see some gaps, to fill some of those gaps could require a monetary contribution if the council is so inclined.
And I won't make this into a motion, but I also want to just reiterate that specific to community health and senior services, we've gone through this process. I think we've raised an expectation that we will address the needs that have been identified, and that usually comes with dollars. And so if the Finance Commission and staff be mindful of what that looks like and set aside some ARPA funds to meet those needs, from all the data that I've seen at a county level, the needs of our most vulnerable communities are increasing, and we haven't even calculated with the pandemic over. So I want to be mindful that there are still increasing needs that will continue. Any other comments? Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I really appreciate your comments, Mayor, and reminding us of the needs, because I think the Chamber of Commerce is a great partner with the town. They do a lot of work. They represent the business well. They also are very good at knowing when to come to the council and to speak to us. And of course, there's concerns that there can be a lot of needs in our community that we're not hearing about yet, or we don't hear about often. And so I think to that extent, we do need to reach out and find out, through the Community Services Commission, what other needs are, because we won't be hearing those as frequently, and they're going to be absolutely critical. Thank you.
Councilmember Hudis.
Just a general comment that I think we all appreciate the sort of groundbreaking work that the town has done with the community grants program, and this can be an excellent mechanism for not only recovering but revitalizing and addressing some of the equity issues. So I would just comment that I think it would be a good idea to try to accelerate that first round of grants that comes right out of the budget, and then perhaps put some money aside, as Town Manager Privetti has suggested. So maybe later in the year, we take another round at this, if there is still money available, because things will evolve, and I think we can utilize the community grant program. So it's just a comment and a suggestion.
Any other comments? And before we close this agenda, I want to make sure that staff, if there's any clarifying questions that you have of council based on the motions.
I just want to clarify that in terms of the street closures, we'll work with the chamber within the time and budget parameters set by the council, that the money that was set aside is really the town's total contribution. We do not have staff resources to actually do the street closures. So we will need to work with the chamber and see how they can accomplish the street closures with appropriate vendors and security, et cetera, to still have these events. And I think we'll work with them in terms of what activities happen in the street, and then how we do crowd control, because I think there's still some other issues that we'll have to work through. So just wanted to be clear that for this summer, we do not have in-kind resources to contribute to street closures. So, but we're happy to work with the chamber to make the street closures successful.
Okay. Thank you. And yes, that was my understanding as well of the motion, which is, I guess, why we kept asking all these clarifying questions. So I appreciate council, your patience as we really tried to make sure we understood each other's motions and what we were voting on. As usual, I thank you for all the work that you do. I think we're doing tremendous work for our residents and our businesses. And so I'm very proud to be colleagues with all of you and our staff. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.